Okay, it's 4:30, so we'll call this meeting to order. Welcome to the January 26th, 2022 regular board meeting. We'll do roll call.
Yeah, Josh, did we already do roll call, or do we need to do that again?
Yeah, good point, Kevin. We did that before closed session, so if it's okay with President Rolfe, we could skip that.
But I imagine if you want to do it, we could do it, yep. Right?
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Why don't we go to special orders of business?
Okay. Oh, do we need to report out of the closed session, Josh?
Yeah, there's no reportable action at closed session.
Okay, no reportable action. Perfect. Thank you. All right. I don't have any. At least staff doesn't have any special orders of business right now.
Okay. Board members? No. Is there any modification of the agenda?
So the only thing that I had is we had talked, Director Rolfe, or President Rolfe and I had talked about the fact that we're missing Director Odette. And so the thought was that, and I'm perfectly fine with this, is to delay the GM performance evaluation either to a special meeting between now and February or at the February meeting. And so I'm fine with that, so that she has an opportunity to be there.
I would have no problem with that.
How do you feel about that, Mary?
Yeah, I'm going to suggest a workshop coming up for goals, and we could link that at that time.
Agree. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So I have a few things that I'd like to say before we move on. The first is I asked Lauren to dig out the old Speak Your Piece initiative that was brought to the community 15 or so years ago, sort of in response to some local agency meetings that were getting pretty heated and unpleasant. And so Phoebe Bell from TTCF went out and found this Speak Your Piece resolution. I don't know if there's any way to put it up on the board. And I don't mean to go over this every board meeting, but I would like to go over it for the first one of the year. So I'll just read it aloud. Pay attention, be aware, and attend to the world and the people around you. Listen, focus on others in order to better understand their points of view. Be inclusive. Welcome all groups of citizens working for the greater good of the community. Don't gossip and don't accept when others choose to do so. Show respect. Honor other people and their opinions, especially in the midst of a disagreement. Be agreeable. Look for opportunities to agree. Don't contradict just in order to do so. Apologize, be sincere, and repair damaged relationships. Give constructive criticism. When disagreeing, stick to the issue and don't make personal attacks. And take responsibility. Don't shift responsibility and blame onto others. Share disagreements publicly. So, just like to remind everybody to keep these in mind during the board meetings. Kevin and Josh and Lauren and I met to do some sort of thinking around how to streamline the board meetings, and especially Josh and Lauren had some great suggestions for just moving things around a little bit so that it flows a little bit better. And also making sure that the action items are closer to the top. So usually the public is attending because of the action items. So we wanted to make that easier for them to do so. So we all have this little flow chart for going through the action items. And I think everybody's probably reviewed that. And lastly, one of the suggestions that was made was to stop reading email during public comment. Other agencies have quit doing this, or maybe never started it. And it does take up it can take up a lot of time. So I didn't want to unilaterally make that decision without talking to the board first. And I also wanted to make sure the public understood this for the next meeting, that we will not be reading emails aloud. And Lauren will take that language out of the agenda, so that's very clear to people.
Public comment emails?
Public comment emails, yes.
If I could just add real quick, President Rolfe, that the public can still send their emails to the board.
Yeah.
You can send it through our website to all the board members, so they have it. They have your opinion or your comments. But I think what you're saying is we're just not going to read all of those every meeting like we've done in past meetings, or is the suggestion. Yeah.
Right. They won't be read aloud, but they will be read. And we will public comment, but we really encourage people have public comment that they come to the meeting and raise their hand, and then we hear it from them directly.
That's what Town of Truckee does, Kat. You send in a written comment, they don't read them.
Right. Right. I think a lot of agencies have gotten away from that. And I think it could streamline our meetings in a way that is beneficial to everyone.
So would the concept be that emails sent in advance of the publishing of the board book would be included in the book, or the email sent would never be available to the public? They would essentially be private to board directors. Because the reason I say that is, if we use the phrase "you can email your public comment," it to me it sort of suggests that my comment will be made public. But if it's not in the board book, then how would others see my comment?
It can be part of the minutes.
So the emails will be included in the minutes?
That's how I understand what we were talking about. Yes.
Well,
My understanding is, like, I think, if you want your written comments and they were part of the board book, there's like a deadline to get it in. Isn't that how most places do it?
yeah.
Like logistically, it would have to be that there would be a deadline for that.
But if the board book comes out Friday and they don't see the board book till then, when would they have to get their written comments in, so that we can see them?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we could see that they could be forwarded to us at any time. There's no time limit on emails that are read as public comment, except
That's true.
and before the board meeting.
Yeah. We have to get pretty descriptive about this, because the one thing that happens is people will send us something, but we don't know if it's, sometimes they'll say, I want this read in the meeting, or this is for the board meeting. Sometimes they just send us a comment,
Okay.
and so it's hard for us, to know what is what. So I maybe it'd be good for Josh. He works with a lot of public agencies. What is the best practice with email and written comment that you're seeing out there, based on what we had talked about before, I guess?
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, this is one area where there's a fair amount of different practices. I think largely based on the amount of comment that the agency receives, and larger agencies, I think, just practically can't put everything on a website or include it in a board book. I would say, just for my opinion of an agency our size, it can be pretty difficult to try to include those emails into the board book, into the agenda packet kind of development, just for all the logistical reasons we've talked about. But I have seen some agencies just post them on their website, not as part of the agenda packet, but just as a resource to, I think, address Director Diamond's question about whether other members of the public will be able to see them. That, from my perspective, kind of sort of threads that needle where there is some public transparency about those emails, but it isn't a huge effort to try to include them in the packet every time.
So then would it behoove us to make clear that when you are emailing, you're emailing communication to the board, and if you want to provide public comment, you have to be in the meeting to provide that?
That's correct. I think that gets to President Rolf's point. If the board's comfortable with this approach, we'll make sure, working with Lauren, that the agenda language is updated so it's very clear to members of the public the process going forward.
That works for me.
Yeah, I thought we also talked, like, if I get emails sent to comments@TruckeeTahoeAirport.com, I just forward them to all board members. And that's how I differentiate a public comment official email or someone just emailing me to Lauren.Tapia, and just, I don't treat those as official public comments.
Okay.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So Kat, are you looking for a motion from us or just consensus or what?
Consensus. I don't think this needs to be an action item. I just didn't want to make this decision without running it by everybody.
I'm good with it.
So we'll update the public comment section of the agenda for next week if that's the consensus of everyone.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds okay. Well, with that behind us, I know that we do have emailed public comments that Lauren has taken this afternoon. So
They're on the air show agenda. So when we call for public comments, I have approximately 14 emails to read. They're not lengthy by any means, but just to be prepared that they all came in within the last hour and a half.
Okay. Is there any public comment about any items that are not on the agenda at this time? I don't see any raised hands. And Lauren, you don't have any public comment that's not on the air show?
I think Mike Cook has a public comment.
Oh, okay.
I have a public comment. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks. Thank you all for allowing me a few minutes to address you tonight. My name is Mike Cook. I'm a 16-year employee and a 27-year resident of the Truckee Tahoe Airport District. And first, let me just say that this organization is unlike any other airport or public agency. You won't find any entity that supports and mirrors the community it serves as well as this district. The maintenance bays that Little League uses when the ball fields are covered in snow, they've housed food drives and clothing drives and toy drives. We've held races, fundraisers, business mixers, dances, graduations, Santa fly-ins, science camps, just to name a few. And that's pretty rare for any government agency, and it's even more rare for an airport. And that is in part thanks to each of you. So thank you. And thank you to our past boards who've approved those things, as well as to our general manager, Kevin, whose patience is truly supernatural. But behind the folks that get a lot of face time in meetings like this are the staff who come to work daily on often bitter cold mornings to make sure that care flight is fueled and that the National Weather Service reports are done and that the airfield is safe and that the businesses and the local nonprofits that depend on this airfield have access. Every one of them makes it possible for firefighters to set up here during catastrophic wildfires, or for search and rescue efforts to have a base camp here when they're looking for missing persons. The staff here, and I mean every player on the team, makes this organization shine. So I was very troubled during the December board meeting when, during a global pandemic with what looks to be historic inflation and runaway housing prices, that this board voted against updating the wage scale. Director Hetherington felt the process is skewed and that wages ratchet up every time an agency looks at their payrolls. Wages are rising in the region regardless of this study, or any study for that matter. If there's a better way to keep pace with the rising cost of living for an organization like ours, let's find it. Because if the centerpiece of a $30,000 study gets rejected, employees deserve some avenue to keep their earnings in step with the market. Director Diamond stated that, actually on many occasions, that this is a great place to work, and it really is. But our employees here don't get commissions, they don't get gain sharing or profit sharing or any discretionary wage adjustments like the private sector. Wage scales are set by you, our elected officials. The job security and health insurance benefits are good in the public sector, but they don't buy a cup of coffee in Truckee. Discounted dental fillings aren't going to pay a mortgage. So if this board is to be fiscally responsible, you have to adopt and maintain attractive wage scales which pay enough so staff can afford to live locally and to patronize our local businesses. Freezing that wage scale does exactly the opposite. I started here in 2005 while I was working on my rotorcraft license. I took a pay hit because I had to give up my commission from the store that I had managed downtown for 10 years, but I wanted to be in aviation. The pay here was so low when I started, I bartended at night downtown at OB's to make ends meet. And whether we're talking about then or now, the starting wage here is very difficult to live on. And meaningful wage growth here takes many long years to get to. One other point I just asked you to consider, and I apologize for going over the 3 minutes. I spent a lot of time working jobs downtown, and that's what they are. They're primarily jobs. They're not careers. Careers do have high-loaded costs. They have much longer retention periods because productive humans grow and they improve themselves and they build amazing skill sets and they get advanced certifications which benefit their employers and their communities. This district gave north of $1.5 million last year and around $700,000 recently to community partners and nonprofits. It is a wonderful testimony to the financial health of this organization. This district is truly a leader in governance, in transparency, and in generosity. And I'm not asking for any charity, but I do request you please reconsider the wage scale recommendation or implement some solution to ensure that the wage scale rises with the inflation and with local conditions. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, is there anyone else? I apologize, I can't see if somebody's waving their hand on my screen.
Sorry,
Okay,
there's a lot to scroll through. I don't see any raised hands.
okay, great, thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda.
Kat, can I just add real quick, just for those that may be new to these public board meetings, during those public comment sections, we can hear public comment, but we can't discuss them. So if someone's thinking, why don't they talk about the things that have been talked about, it's been noted, and we'll get, we'll think about that and get back on that later, but we can't discuss it. Just might be good for some that aren't familiar to know.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so yes, we need a motion for items 1 through 6 on the consent agenda. Rick's trying to make a motion.
No, I'd like to pull number 6.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve 1 through 5.
I'll second.
Is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, roll call.
Vice President Diamond?
I would say, yeah, the only thing I want to clarify is I believe last time the extension resolution was handled separately. Is that, it's okay to lump that in with the consent? I just wanted to verify that.
Yeah, it's a great question, Director Diamond. The reason it's lumped in with consent this time is because we are within the 30 days, and so we don't have to do a new resolution. It's an extension of a prior resolution.
Okay, yes, my vote's yes.
All right. Director Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Odette is absent. President Rolfe?
Yes.
And Director Stevens?
Yes.
Okay, so item 7 we don't need a motion for, it's just an update.
We have to go back to item 6.
Oh, item 6, I'm sorry.
Since I pulled it, you want me to talk?
Sure.
I was concerned about the liability amount of 35 million. I thought we talked about 50. I talked to Kevin and Josh by via email. The consensus was that that the 35 was appropriate. It just seems like, did we even get a pricing for 50?
No, that was what I was going to bring up, is if you want us to, and Kelly, you've been working more on this than I have, but we probably, unless there's some issue with our current term, but we could go do that. We could go get a quote for 50 and see what that looks like.
Yeah, I can reach out to Aviation Marine and get a quote with a higher number.
I don't think it affects our, we don't have insurance that's expiring if we wait a month. Is that, Kelly, is it?
It's renewing in the month of January, but he could get me a quote tomorrow. It's no
Okay,
big.
then
I just like to see the difference in costs going to 50. 50 sounds a lot more warm and fuzzy than 35.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, let us do this. If you want to approve it as is, and Kelly, again, help me if I've got this wrong, you can approve the 35 with the direction to staff to get a quote to raise it to 50 and come back in February with that number.
I just, in this litigious society, I personally have a $10 million umbrella liability policy. I'd like to hear about 50, and I'd be willing to approve the 35 and please get a cost to increase it to 50. And
Right.
we can talk about it next time.
And then that would go into place, assuming that we can accept that dollar figure. That would go into place in February then,
It would
after our
raise our
February board
rate.
meeting.
It'd raise
We
our
would-
limit.
Yeah. And so it
Yeah.
would be for 11 months instead of for 12 months. They would prorate.
No, we need to get it going for now, for January.
So how, as we as a board, then how do we approve that delta?
So I think Director Hetherington and Kelly, please correct me. I think if we were to approve it today, then if we were to raise it in February, we can ask them if it's prorated or if it's handled to the next February, how that would affect the expiration date, Director Hetherington.
Okay.
And I'll reach out to AIG right now.
I mean,
Oh, okay.
we're talking about renewal quote of 25,000. My opinion, if the extra 35, 15 million, I guess if it raised to 30, I'd be in favor of it. But let's just go that. But
We'll get you some numbers.
I would. Oh, you're going to get us some numbers, but you need it to move that we approve this.
I guess that's
And
my question to Kelly.
And I so move.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, it hasn't passed yet, Kelly.
Thank you for
I'll,
making.
I'll second it, but I would like to see the higher number as well.
All right, we have a second. Is there any public comment?
No public comment.
Is that something we can come back? I mean, if she gets us that number tomorrow, that we can vote for it via email, Josh?
Hard to do.
Unfortunately, we would need to do a special meeting, but it could be a 2-minute special meeting if that worked best.
Yeah, let us look at what our options are if we can, we'll get some more information on that. And if we could do, if you want to do a special meeting, we could probably do that if we find that that we have to get a board approval.
Okay, you want to do roll call, Kevin?
Yeah. Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette is absent, President Rolfe,
Yes.
and Director Stevens.
Yes.
Okay, so then item 7, we don't need
Just an information item.
just an information item that we've all read. Okay, so on to action items. Review of air show proposal and budget.
Yeah. So I'll just start this off. Obviously, we've been talking about the air show for some time and at different meetings, and in our in past meetings, we've met with the air show committee and they've made presentations, and the board's indicated that they can come back with a proposal to look at a air show for 2022. We do have some funds budgeted in this budget that has a flag on it. I think there's $275,000 in our budget, and so we have I think David Love and some others from the air show committee are here to go over a proposal that they have for an air show for June 25th of 2022, a possible option to do an event at that time. And in your packet, you have their formal proposal, and then they've got their budget that for review that the board all has. And so that's the staff report.
Okay, David, were you going to present this?
I have a technical question. We've had some one-on-one discussions with some of you because you had questions in depth for us. My question is, and this is to Kevin actually, and maybe it's to Kat. With Teresa out today, and I know she had a lot of interest in what we were thinking about, is there any way to table this to a special meeting so she has an opportunity to have input?
Kevin?
That would be up to the board. You're welcome to table this to February. We don't have any special meetings scheduled at this point, but that might be another option if the board wanted to go that direction.
I just hate to have her not have an opportunity to have input.
I think you should wait.
I agree. But I also want to be sensitive to the air show folks, because February, that's really cutting it close if they want to put on an air show in June.
We've had some discussion. The good news is that for the vast majority of the people that we have contracts with, we've been carrying people over for 2 years and they keep saying we're really interested. And we did reach out particularly to performers if we do the air show component of it. The other things are like tents and porta potties and stuff like that. So in our general opinion, that at this point in time, we would not be severely handicapped in terms of going forward, assuming you approve this, if we had to wait till February for a final decision.
I have one.
David, is it Teresa's absence that you're specifically concerned with? Like, for example, if at the next in the next meeting, if somebody else was absent, would you also want to defer it, or would you, as long as Teresa was here, you'd be okay to have it?
I'd like you to defer it if possible till we had all 5 of you, because I mean, this has been a very, we've done a lot of vigorous discussion about this and had lots of meetings, and you've put tons of energy into this. It just seems to me having one of you out sort of leaves aside all that work that's been put on at this point in time.
Would an option be to have discussion on it and defer a decision? Kat, would that work?
It's up to you. I'm available.
And the reason I bring this up, David, is because from the discussion, whether Teresa was here or not, there might have been a deferral if, for example, that some additional information was required. So I'm wondering if it's a bad idea to have the discussion about this and a deferral until Teresa's here, or whether we should shelve the entire thing until a 5-member board is available.
Well, I would hope that Teresa's watching. I mean, I have COVID and I'm here. So she could be home watching to at least hear the discussion. As a thought that, because I have some things I'd like to bring up, but, just a thought.
We're available whatever we choose to do.
What say you, Kat?
Well, I think we're all here except for Teresa, and she can watch this if she's if she's probably sleeping it off, and it sounds like she's pretty sick. She can watch it later, but I think any downside to going ahead and having the presentation and the discussion. And we can defer the vote until the five of us are together.
And I guess just ask questions of the committee that then they could use to, if there's questions, I guess. And again, because I have COVID, I'm not firing on all pistons, so be patient with me. I may not be so clear. It's this idea of maybe, do we want all the public comments this time or in February? But right now, this is a chance for us to ask questions. Just throwing it out there as a thought. So we, for the other board members to think about.
Well, I
got a fever. Where's my fan?
The presentation and the discussion that we probably should include the public comment. Is that correct?
Yes. That'd be my suggestions. I think if you want to have a discussion and hear what the airshow committee has to offer and what they're proposing, hear the public comment, and you can have questions and discussion, and then you can defer the vote until you're all here. I mean that seems like a pretty reasonable way to go. You can also defer the whole thing. You have both those options, but we're all here.
What's your preference, David?
I can do the presentation and would allow you to see if you want us to go back to the drawing board with any other ideas or information. Like David said, I'm fine with that. I think I'm speaking for the rest of the members without taking a vote, but I think I'm comfortable representing that position.
Okay, Rick, are you okay with having the discussion right now?
I am indeed.
Okay. All right, fire away.
Okay, since you have the whole packet, I'm trying to be as brief as I can. I'm assuming you've all read it in some detail. There are a couple things that are sort of key to this discussion. What we did is listen to the discussion about, can you reduce the total budget? And that was number one that we really worked. How can we reduce the total amount for the show? And we think we found a way to accomplish that without defeating a quality event that we are able to produce as a result of that. Second thing that came up was, how can we further emphasize and put more energy funds into the whole family festival STEM component of the day, which we then worked on that. The third thing, actually, we have been thinking about, and Mary sort of triggered a little bit of that for us. We wanted to add a new component we hadn't had before, which really has to do with transitioning from fossil fuel equipment and airplanes and all those kind of things to electric, which then present that. We did a little of that because Tesla came up and brought their vehicle and a nice display for us the last air show we had, which they fully funded themselves. And I think we have that opportunity. So if you take a look at that, when you look at the budget, section number 1 is Family Festival and STEM Expo expenses. The things that support that and make it take place are the line items in that. Total amount is $42,050. We reduced that we increased that by adding some new components to it. It doesn't take into account how much we're going to add with this whole STEM related transition from fossil fuel to electrical equipment, because we think we've got an airplane probably that can come in free. We've got some other people. We've had preliminary discussions. So STEM will grow and Family Festival beyond the discussion in the overall proposal we provided to you, the narrative. But we want to kind of highlight that because we've been working hard on that the last 4 or 5 weeks. We reduced the total air show component budget to a much smaller footprint. We reduced particularly a number of World War II airplanes that we had used as part of what we consider the history of aviation that we do. It's a little STEM related, but it's a part. And we talked to the folks in Oregon who provided those airplanes previously. and said at this time we didn't feel like we wanted to spend the funds to fly them down here in terms of housing and gasoline and an opportunity to come here. We had an opportunity that was very unique last summer, and that is the Air Force offered to bring in their brand new fighter, the F-35, but we have to pay for housing and security and all kinds of other stuff. And that was a big chunk of change to do that. And so we considered that even though it's a kind of a unique opportunity, and we found it as such, we could take that out of the budget and save a significant amount of money in terms of the overall cost. So we had two major items we were able to drop to reduce the cost of the air show component, which are static displays, flybys, and a handful of performers doing limited part of the show. The marketing budget stays the same. The marketing budget, it's important to understand that it's a 12-month activity. It's just not buying ads or things like that. It's discussions and it's meetings with people in the community, and it's getting sponsors on board that help sponsor. We get additional funds for the nonprofits from sponsors, but that's having to outreach and explain to them and provide packets to them about what we're trying to accomplish. So there's a very large number of activities that go on during the entire year as far as the marketing event for us. So we kept that stable. We didn't expand it, but we kept that stable within the budget. You all had agreed previously, which we highly appreciated as the nonprofits, to set aside $66,000 for the nonprofits. We left that in the budget. So if you look at the budget as a whole, it is now $189,350, which is a $66,000 cut over what you had preliminary approved as a budget for last summer, the show we canceled last summer. So we really listened to what you had to say about Family Festival and STEM. I think we've done a good job of really trying to give that support. Secondly, we've got our air show footprint and cost as far as that component of the program that we're doing. And hopefully, with this reduction in budget, it's something that can fit within your financial considerations and what you're doing with the overall budget of the airport. So I think that's it. A lot of this stuff I covered last time about what the air show is and what we emphasize and what we do during the day in terms of a lot of the special stuff we do with veterans, et cetera. So to keep it as brief as I can, that's sort of an overview available for your questions or comment.
Okay. Rick, do you have any questions or comments?
Date, what's the date? I see June 25th.
We had preliminary put a placeholder on that, and it's a placeholder. We really need to talk to Kevin a little bit more to make sure that that's still okay. We want to do June. We had sort of held aside two dates that we can function in, the 18th, the weekend before that, and that weekend, to stay away from the 4th of July and the impact it has on the airport out of the fire season. So we absolutely would like to do June, and it would be one of those two weekends for sure, the 25th or the 18th. And we're set to do that. We've reached out preliminary to performance saying, if this happens, can we still count on you? And we're getting feedback back from them at this point in time.
That date works for the airport.
Which one? Both of them?
Well, June is good. June 25th is a good date. And so, yes.
That's my only question.
All right, David Diamond.
Yeah, I've got a few things, David. If I remember when we brought this, it was late last year when this topic came back to us. I believe that one of the first stumbling points that this board had was that you or the committee had provided us with a document of terms under which you would provide this, and we had some serious concerns about that. For example, saying that if the show had for any reason had to be canceled, that we were still financially obligated for this. I see a revised budget, but I don't see revised terms. Are we to expect that document is still the overriding concern here? If we voted for this, we would be approving that document?
I don't see that. It's a Kevin question. It's my understanding that if you approve the funds, then it's our obligation to meet with Kevin, put together a final document for your approval, obviously. That, to us, I don't see as an overriding issue. It's just a matter of coming up with a document that protects you effectively. We certainly would hope wherever possible, and we appreciated it last year, if the nonprofits can get funds, if something else comes up unexpected. But our only really concern is to try and support the nonprofits and do a good show for you. Okay, yeah, because I mean, I don't know how the other directors feel. I feel like I would not be comfortable voting to move ahead on something without seeing the contract. Not just on the budget alone. That to me is not. It's not enough of a factor there. So maybe that's something that I don't know if that's something that could be dealt with offline. The other, and you specifically mentioned that the nonprofits here, and this is primarily for my my board mates here, and in light of our discussion in our last meeting, I do believe that we should revisit policy instruction 311 before we keep making exceptions to it. And we've had a recent discussion about that. We did that in December. We made exceptions to it. This, I believe, should be governed under policy 311. It is, if it is investments, donation, whatever you want to call it, to nonprofits, I believe that should be factored in. We do have, in theory, we have a process involved with TTCF right now, and I would like to see us be consistent with that. I don't know how that would affect this. I am still concerned, again, in reference to our last meeting, of our financial situation in spending money like this before we have had an opportunity to discuss where we clean up financial issues in other areas. So that is a concern for me. Maybe that's not a concern for everybody here. And I had some minor questions about the budget itself. There were some things that changed, like you had first aid for $500 in the last budget, and now we have $1,500 for medical equipment, but there's no first aid anymore, but there was no medical equipment in the first. So it kind of seemed like maybe some things were being moved around and maybe inflated in another area where it looked like something else had been reduced. So I wondered about that. And then the last two comments I got on here. One is just that the noting in the end of here, you're estimating $1,000 for a static aircraft display and $52,000 for a air show. So that's a $51,000 difference between what would be a static show and what would be the air show. So I think that's worth mentioning there. And then the last point, which comes to this is a community thing, and the district is volunteering. I know we have a lot of staff volunteers here. And like you're saying, the nonprofits are donating, and everybody's, and the taxpayers are certainly donating on this. I don't understand why the PR would be so expensive. To me, that should be donated. It could be a community service, and one could even argue that if there were an investment made in that marketing, public relations, maybe it should be made in a firm that could go and help you get corporate sponsors to offset these costs. Because I really believe if the event is as popular and well attended as people say, we should be able to get, I shouldn't say we, you should be able to get corporate sponsors to offset a lot of these costs. So those are kind of all my points on it. Would you like a comment, or just want to make a comment at this point in time?
No, if you've got feedback on any of that, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Talking about the marketing issue, I'm sure you're aware we have a website for the air show, which is probably the number one way that people take a look at this. The cost in this marketing is the website. It's maintenance, it's upkeep, it's changing, and that obviously takes a person with a set of skills to do that kind of thing. There's no place else in the budget to keep the website maintained and functional and operational. I think that the issue of having you talk about this position, this budget does very much reach out to look for corporate sponsorship. What has historically been approved in the budget is that corporate sponsorship above and beyond cost historically has gone to the nonprofits as opposed to pay for line item operational stuff. The board historically said, okay, we'll pay for the event line item. If you can get some additional corporate sponsorship, that's something that we certainly feel like with the work that's put in, the nonprofits should be able to take advantage of. We also have to understand that we do tremendous amount of work during the year in terms of outreach and that kind of stuff. That's a part of this budget. So it's really not a matter of just advertising the show in any shape, form, or manner. I'd agree with you if that's all they did. But it's a full year-round operation. Lots of activities. I actually have a list here of 23 different things that are done by that team that they provided to me that I asked about. It's in front of me here. But so it's a very comprehensive event. And if you would look at people hours, I would say that the people hours put in by the marketing team at least is 3 times what we get charged. So they charge, I mean, if you hire someone to do a website, if you have to buy an ad space just before the show so that the local area knows our details and our schedule and who's showing up, that's hard dollars. I mean, there's no other way to do that, but that's hard dollars. And I think it's fair that the person who puts all that together gets at least paid for a portion of their time. And I guarantee you it's only a portion. There's a lot of volunteer hours by that marketing team, and it has been historically for the last 8 years. So
are you, just clarify, so in this budget, the district would give $66,000 to the nonprofits, and the nonprofits are also getting money from the corporate sponsors.
There is an opportunity for that if the corporate sponsor designates that they would like to do this for the Kids Zone. We would like to support the Kids Zone. Corporate sponsors,
I mean, if we were looking at a complete budget here, and this is what I'm confused about, wouldn't the corporate sponsor contribution be included in this so that we would know how much of this was being offset by corporate sponsorship? Because, for example, I asked you, assuming there was none.
We don't know at this point in time because we haven't reached out to any corporate sponsors. So I can't tell you a dollar figure because there isn't one.
Can you estimate a dollar figure based on previous shows?
I can't because it's not an area that I work on, to be honest with you, sir.
So would anybody at the Air Show Committee know how much you got from corporate sponsors before?
We can reach out and get some information back through Kevin.
That would be great. I'd love to know that because I really think there's a lot of potential there. That was it for me, unless you had like anything more about anything else. I know I said a lot of stuff there, but if there was anything
I think
else.
everything's just sort of small detail. I think that
Okay.
we could certainly address it in writing if you wanted before we would reach an end point in a final vote.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mary?
Yeah, so, okay, I'm here. Thank you for being aware of the greenhouse gas. I think that is a big piece of marketing that we could be doing there. It also, in that study, and then in the whole vision of this was that it was a local event. So I think there's 4 venues in Truckee and Tahoe for places to reach out to the local environment. I don't think we should be advertising in San Francisco or Sacramento or Reno or trying to encourage, because the vehicle traffic is what was the biggest part of the greenhouse gas. And if someone has a second home here, they would be kind of tuned in to the news up here anyway. And so again, I guess to mirror what David's saying, it's 26,000 you've got plus 800 for the website updates. That seems like a lot of money for reaching out to the Sierra Sun, Moonshine Inc., KTKE, the radio, and CCA TV, the television. That seems like a lot of money, $2,500 to buy ad buys in the airport district. And then to manage it, those numbers seemed high to me. And if we're trying to do a local, which was in the staff report in October, was our event does not appeal to large out-of-area businesses, nor is marketing the show outside the district boundaries a district goal. So I very much think that number's high if we're just trying to, this is a local event. And the greenhouse gas, in that aspect, in terms of these performers, some of them come from Arizona, and the impact of that, and then we're putting these performers up. I'm assuming this is a one-day show, not a 2-day show, right?
It's a one-day show. Most performers fly their own little airplane in, and they're not, the ones that we've had in the show are not big, great airplanes, and they fly it in. They have to come in 2 days early because by law under the FAA, they have to come in here and do what we call a rehearsal show the day before with the FAA present and basically show everything we're going to do. So they have to be here that extra day by law of regulation from the FAA.
So we're paying for 3 days lodging for every performer.
Yeah, by FAA regulation.
Okay.
Just for the performers who fly in the show. But that's something we have no control over. To be legal, we have to accomplish those kind of things.
I understand. And then rental cars, $4,000 for rental cars, $8,000 for accommodations. Announcer last year was $500. In your first proposal, the announcer was $1,600. This time it's $2,000. And the air boss was $1,350. Now it's $1,500. You know, that was October. Now this is January. So those prices have gone up. The aviation acts, so $25,000. How many aviation acts are you anticipating?
We're set right now with the potential of 4 or 5. Partly depends on scheduling issues with them at this point in time and whether they are outside of our date that we've set and to look around.
Because I'm a consultant in my other life, and you know, I bid on jobs all over the country, and those are my expenses to fly there and to accommodate myself to pay for the hotel rooms. And so that's an interesting idea that we're paying for the acts and then also paying for the accommodations and rental cars.
Mary, we could do it the other way, but I can guarantee you, and we can provide more information you're interested, our acts over the last 5 years, because A, they like to come here, B, they're all people we know quite well personally, have reduced what they normally charge by anywhere from 25 to 50% to come do this show. And they'll go do another show down in Los Angeles and they'll get paid double the amount of money. You know, obviously we're not a great big show. And the tradition in our field is to break out rather than have a big thing for all cost into a single line item, is to break the line items out so they're very aware. And then we've also been able to negotiate rates with the local hotels, which saves us some money. Those kinds of things have sort of been traditional with us. So I can say that we have reduced the cost of doing 4 or 5 acts dramatically by the way we've negotiated rates with both the pilots, the local hotels, if they went out and just bought, they paid for it on the open commercial market. And we've had great support from our community hotels in that to give us consideration rates for what we do here those couple of days.
Okay. And then, go on.
And I think it's important to understand that this budget, we look at, it's a couple things in this budget, kind of sad for us. Our show announcer basically volunteered for us. He died this last year. So we're going to have to go out into the market and get a new announcer that didn't basically volunteer his time to come work for us, Steve Strafakakis. So we've got some things in here that just have changed over time and that, but I can also tell you that this is a dramatically reduced cost for what actually is going to be accomplished.
And then I'm just wondering, I mean, so they were originally supposed to come in 20 and we had COVID. And so they carried, and said, well, we'll come in 21. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up paying them those acts. No, we didn't.
That's a question.
No, we didn't. We lost some deposits, just because we canceled within,
that time period.
Yeah, that time period, but we didn't pay any.
Because, and I just bring this up because what if weather cancels? Because we've had June, the year my son graduated high school, it rained all through June. And I assume you wouldn't have an air show in June. So in the rain, or if there is early fires, what happens again with these? What would be, I guess that's what I'd want to see in this budget. What would be the worst case if weather, smoke, anything happens that cancels it? What's the worst case outlay for us and not getting an air show?
And that's a Kevin question because Kevin oversees all the contracts and their provisions.
So I would just tell you it's $30,000 to $40,000 of probably lost. It could be a little bit less than that, but just of things we would have bought and purchased over the course of a year that you don't get back.
And then
those are ad buys. They're different. And I'm just going off what the shows have done in the past.
Gotcha.
And if there's deposits or some of those things.
And Mary, before I'll lose this train of thought, I apologize.
No worries.
I understand. We're all that way. We absolutely do not buy ad buys out of our area. We do not buy ad buys in the Reno area, in the Sacramento area, in the San Francisco area, because of the way media operates. So something is a local newspaper or a local presentation, these other folks pick it all up and then they repeat it. But we didn't pay them a dime to repeat it for us, and we didn't ask them to repeat it for us. It's just the way media systems now operate. We've got Colonel Bud Anderson. If he shows up again, people are going to be really interested, and they want to let people know because he's such an important human being in the field of aviation at this point in time. But we absolutely do not buy out of the area.
And you never have? Because I know I've heard ads, and they've been ads, not just public announcements when I've been in Sacramento on business trips.
I can tell you at this point in time in the budget we have in front of you with confidence, because I've been in all those discussions, we aren't going to buy ads in this budget outside the area.
So you think it's still going to cost $29,000 to put on a production? I mean, I'm just thinking about other events that happen in town that have big draws. And that seems really high to me, but I
and again, we can provide if it like I said, I have this 2-page list of all the things they did last year for the last year's air show, and we certainly would be very happy to provide it because you're not going to vote this board meeting, and it could be part of the info packet for you. We asked that team to give us an itemized list of all the things that made up the cost, and I have it in front of me sitting here. I didn't think to put it in the board packet.
Okay.
But I can clearly make that available to you for review before we get to the next step.
Okay. The other thing is, I would agree with David in that I'd want to see the term sheet. The very first one under recitals says the airport district wishes to present an annual air show and family festival. Mm-hmm. Instead, it should be written that the air show and family festival wants to present an air show. As I mentioned before, I don't want to take on any liability personally, and my husband is very concerned about that. If we are in a position where we're asking you, I am concerned about my own personal liability, even though I'm assured that it's not, but I would vote no in that condition no matter what.
I'd kick it back to Kevin too. Kevin, is there carryover language from previous contracts year after year that probably have become somewhat?
There is. I mean, that the ad hoc committee from 2017 Some of that language came out of that committee. That was a long time ago. So, if the board did want to proceed, and it sounds like, having a discussion in February, we can put together if I don't want to spend any staff time on that until we knew more. But if the board wants to see what that contract would look like, we can have that, for February.
And Mary, one thing I asked when we will provide this packet on, it's not a marketing budget only. It's an events management. So this team helps. We do a VIP tent, and for that people actually pay for tickets, which helps, and that money helps offset, as David asked, some of our other costs. But someone's got to get all that together and food and put those pieces together and reach out to people about VIP stuff and let them know how to get VIP tickets and set up VIP ticketing process online, because we do all of that stuff online. So it creates a revenue stream, but we have to pay somebody to do all the management of setting all those opportunities and events up. So think about this as marketing and events management, managing much of the family festival activities that we do during the day, not the air show flying part, but that. And so they really have a very dual role. And they come to every meeting we have every month, all year long. And then we send them forth to research stuff and update stuff and change stuff. So they probably attend at least 50 hours of meetings with us during the year, because they're a key part of that discussion and we need their expertise.
So, Kevin, what I would ask from you then is, or from David, in past cases, how much revenue is created by the VIP tent? And because that could go towards offsetting it. And if it's only making, by the time you buy the food and everything, and it's making $20 or $500, I would ask, is it worth it? And so we need to have some numbers there to put our arms around. If it's making 10,000 or it's 20,000, but if it's only minimal, then I question the value of that whole aspect, especially since it's going to be one day, and is it one show or two shows?
It's a one-day event where the limited number of flying acts that we do, they go twice, because we've discovered that if we do it in the morning, a whole bunch of people come out with the kids and family, and they say, great, we've seen it. And now they know we're going to repeat it again at 1 o'clock, and a lot of them go home, and it solves the parking problem big time. And it also, for different families, morning or afternoon, gives them that opening and opportunity to attend, and they aren't going to bring their kids for a 6-hour day or 7-hour day.
Right. And we've had circumstances where the wind kicked up and they could not fly the afternoon flight. Exactly. They just did the morning. So that ties into the whole VIP thing as well. So I'd like a hard number, what bang for the buck on that. And the idea of bringing in 4 or 5, I'd like to know where they're coming from. In my mind, it was like, well, how many of these are coming from 300 miles away, or are they all coming from 1,000 miles away? I'd like the specificity of it, because that is a greenhouse gas thing. And so if you can flesh that out a little bit. The other thing, go on.
No problem. Yeah, we can. And we'd also need to give you a little detail, because they're not bringing trailers and all kinds of equipment. It's like we have one young lady who flies in her little single engine airplane and then performs for us.
Right. Her dancing. She dances.
Yeah. So it's not a big footprint that she creates by any means.
And then, Kevin, the other aspect I would like when we're talking about this is the historical level of staff time. I know through the year it's not that much, but the last 3 weeks you have stated to us that it is fairly significant. And I would like to know what we're talking about in terms of staff hours. David's going to provide us people hours, but what are you talking about with staff hours?
Yeah, I think that was in October, but I'll go back and look. I think I may have provided that, but let me go back and look. I can't.
Well, it's just to make it a complete
Sure.
report.
No, I'll have
I've
to
got
look at
part
that.
of the October thing
I mean,
in front of me.
Sorry.
I think you just, in October, you stated that it was a fairly large commitment of time in the last 3 weeks, but I'd like to, you can actually probably look back.
Yeah, no,
You could put a number on it.
You can submit that. And I think I've already done that somewhere. But yeah. So is that
Okay.
direction to staff? Other board members want all that information? I think we can provide the VIP tent stuff. I know we've got the cost of what you've spent on VIP tents. I will say some of the philosophy was maybe a little bit different back then, because the idea was the VIP tent also helped with the sponsor numbers, and we can get the sponsor numbers too. I say we don't ever handle all the sponsor money, but I know in previous air show committee reports they had those numbers, and it was in the 40,000 range is what I remember. The VIP tent helped also sustain that, and then the money that they generated off that VIP tent went into the pool that again went to the youth and children's programs. But we can find that information.
And, it's like, if we're giving them $22,000 of property tax money, it sort of seems reasonable, especially having gone through that whole cost allocation. Should we not be reimbursed some of those sponsorship dollars, or should those sponsorship dollars go against the contribution dollars?
Yeah. I think the thought was always that if those, and I think in our past agreement, that money's all supposed to go to these programs that these nonprofits run.
Right.
So it's not, it's not pizza parties for the Optimist Club. It's scholarships and stuff to all their
I understand. Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just saying, is 22,000 enough, or is it end up 32,000 for each of them? And we should know that. And if there's extra $30,000 or $40,000 in sponsorships, should that go against the cost? I mean, there's people who say that we should be charging for parking. There's, do people want it? And again, it's all tied to, we're running the numbers, and I'm just being very cognizant after going through that cost allocation. But I do appreciate your focus, on the STEM. It's $3,700 versus your last budget of $2,700. It's, when I add up, when your last budget, the family festival things were $4,000, and then the logistics was $38,000. So it's pretty similar numbers. You've just organized it different. So
It better represents how the money is used and what it supports during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever asked us the question before, so we didn't try and get a focus what's air show and what's family festival and STEM in
Right.
terms of the stuff. You seem to want that, so we tried to do a better presentation for you.
And the greenhouse gas. And then are there going to be rides again out of the P51 that they've done in the past? Because that's a big footprint.
Yeah, this point in time, we don't have that act set up at all.
Okay.
And we don't have this time in the act. We've had what's called a C-47 World War II airplane. We've had a B-25, which is a World War II airplane, which is historically superly important, and it was a part of our Veterans Recognition Day. But we took those out of the air show proposed for next summer.
Okay. I think those are most of my questions. Thank you.
I think one comment just to make, and Kevin probably has a little better feel because I haven't been in budget negotiations year in and year out. There seemed to be on past boards saying, well, rather than us spending thousands of hours trying to get sponsor dollars to help compensate the thousands of hours of volunteer time the nonprofits put in, the air show, your committee or your board in the past said, well, why don't we set aside the $66,000 for them and not expect you to go out and hustle like mad to try and get enough money to justify all those volunteer hours. So we've cut back dramatically in our outreach to try and get money in just to get the nonprofits some dollars. We've really appreciated that. It's just changed the focus to put on the air show that have so many hours tied up in just trying to, and everybody knows when you go up from door to door and knock on every company, corporation, and business asking for a little support, that's a huge undertaking. And so we've appreciated not being locked into that to survive the process. And I think the last thing I just want to say is, when I came on board this, and I know most people on the committee, we looked at two things. This was a thing for families and kids on two levels. One, a really exciting day, fun day, learning about tons of stuff, and raising some money for local youth groups. And so the airport district put on a show to support local youth groups and outreach and STEM activity. And that's what I thought this was all about. And I'm hoping it just stays with that focus. Any other questions for me, folks?
I don't have any questions. Most of them, I think they're all answered. I'm sorry.
I have another comment.
Okay, go ahead.
I think David Diamond's comment about the contract is bang on, spot on, right on. What we saw of the contract in September was basically, let's renew the same old contract for 5 years. And we need to relook at that. We need to look at, do we even, I'm not sure I want to do this for 5 years. If I vote yes, or I think I'm more interested in, let's just see how this goes. And 1 year would be more comfortable to me than 5 years. And because this is basically a new concept, maybe not totally new, but certainly reduced. And let's see where we go. And I'd also like to clarify, Kevin, with the cancellation. Although I was around on the 2016 air show, which had wind like you couldn't believe, and it still went on. But the acts were tamed down because there was a lot of wind.
That was a windy year for sure.
Yeah, it blew away my tent.
We were tying trucks to the VIP tent.
Yeah.
So.
At least we're flexible.
So I wanted to give you that direction, that the number of years is an important factor on the contract.
Kevin, I had one question. When does the service agreement normally get actually constructed?
Well, I guess it depends on what it is we're doing, but I think where we're at right now, at least with this item, is we've gotten a lot of input, and I think we have enough to to get the information the board's asking for, and then we can revise that previous contract with some of these things along with your proposed budget and bring it back in February and see what everyone wants to do.
Okay, I hadn't been at the table when they were constructed previously. So
well, it was 2017, and it was, I believe, it was John Jones and Teresa that were on the ad hoc committee that created.
That's correct.
Right, Rick?
That's
created
correct.
And you were precisely right, David Love, that they the air show committee was generating about $10,000 each, maybe 12, and with all that sponsor work, we were covering the costs. But at that time, the thought was go out and put on a good show, and we'll provide the revenue. Well, it was a service fee; it was a fee for service to put on the show, and that was the methodology back then. And obviously we that was just for that 5-year agreement, and we can modify, change, alter, adjust that as much as we want with what the current board would like to do.
Okay, well, we're ready wherever we can help.
I have one other thought in that when David talked about this as part of PI 311 and fee for service, or how we allocate funds for the community, it really needs to be in that discussion, which will come up.
Yeah.
The very last paragraph of PI 311 has a provision for this kind of thing, but I agree we need to talk about that, and it's timely because we are going to be talking about PI 311. It's our hope. We have an ad hoc committee meeting on the 10th. We hope to start getting that revised policy instruction back in front of you in February. There's a theme here of February. There's a lot of things we're talking about that we want to do in February. So I got to look at that agenda, and we'll figure that out. And Kat and I will, David Diamond, will work on the agenda for that February meeting and see if we can get all this done.
And I have one other request for the people who are making public comments. Lauren's got 14 that she will read, and there probably are going to be other comments. But if you're going to make comments this month, please don't make them again next month. the same comment. If you have new comments, I understand, but just a request.
I have 29 now.
29.
Well, keep in mind, next time we won't be reading emails. So if people want to make public comment next time, they can come and wave their hand in the Zoom meeting. So my comment about this topic, first of all, I really commend the air show folks for going back to the drawing board and coming up with a budget that is easier for all of us to live with. I really like the addition of the electric vehicle expo. I think that's really timely, and I echo Rick and David. I really my initial issue with the air show back in the fall was not even so much the budget as the contract. So I think that's something that really needs to be presented in February in a way that we can all live with, because we're all concerned about what happens if things fall through, if there's a fire or COVID, whatever. We don't know what the future is going to be, but the way it was presented to us previously didn't really give the airport much of an out. So I guess moving forward, we're not going to have a vote tonight, but we do have public comments. And Lauren, if you'd like to start reading those.
Yeah. And when I'm done reading the public comment, if there's anyone in the Zoom meeting that wants to make a live public comment, raise your reaction emoji, your hand. It's yellow. Rick has it raised right now. That's what it looks like. Okay. First public comment is from Meryl Milner. Our family really hopes this happens. We feel it is a positive, community-oriented event. Second email is from Christina Temple. I'm sending this email in support of the annual air show hosted by the airport. This has become an annual event that we miss dearly. Our newly 14-year-old is anxiously awaiting to come back this summer. This obviously brings people from all generations to the airport for community gathering that will still be held with social distancing norms that we have become accustomed to. I do understand community concern based on the aerial tricks of some of the airshow participants. Given I am not a pilot and don't understand aviation, I can't comment on that. However, I do put trust in the board to schedule and support acts safe for the unique location of our airport. Given the sad events of last year, and it is understandable that the show was canceled. However, if the airport decides to no longer continue the annual event, it would be nice to have one last event as a way to say goodbye to something well loved by the community. Christina Temple. Third comment by Janet Mooring. Please keep the air show going. It is an amazing event for our community. Diane DeCure. Dear friends, the Truckee Air Show and Family Festival is a great event for the whole Tahoe area. Please continue with the event. Garrett Morrow. Please plan and execute a budget that allows the air show and festival to happen this year. Joseph and Charlotte Kubicki. Hello, we are homeowners and part-time residents of Truckee. We are writing to express our support to continue holding the yearly air show at Tahoe Truckee Airport. This is a fun activity for the whole community, and Truckee is a great place to hold it. We would also like to encourage the airport management to do whatever they can to minimize noise to aircraft using the airport, especially when operating late at night or early in the morning. Rick Raudsner, I believe the air show should return. It is an important community event that brings awareness and fun to one of the most important assets of the region. Please bring back the air show. Rugo Photo, please keep the air show going. It is a great outdoor family venue and helps to inspire our kids with a unique experience. Jim Collin, Vice President of the Truckee Optimist Club. I would like to see the Truckee Tahoe Air Show scheduled for 2022 and 2023. This is a valuable community resource and feature that would not be eliminated or that should not be eliminated or forgotten. Ron Cuff. As a pilot and co-founder of the Safe Launch Addiction Prevent effort, Fights Above Addiction, I encourage you to schedule a 2022 air show in Truckee. Families and kids need uplifting events now more than ever. More than 103,000 young Americans died of drug overdose last year, and the teen suicide rate is increasing rapidly. The Truckee event is one of the best that Safe Launch has ever attended, and that says a lot. We have attended 54 airport and air show events since 2014. Our next Flight Above Addiction is in Buckeye, Arizona, February 18th, 19th of 2022. And the town of Buckeye is anxious to have us participate again this year after taking a hiatus last year. Thank you for consideration. Mary K. Jones. I've resided in this area for many decades. In the 70s, before most of you were born, the airport has held a sled dog races in the winter and the air show in the summer. The goodwill and tourism brought into the area from these events was and is priceless. I believe that cancellation of the air show was a mistake this year, as it is the only opportunity for the majority of the community to participate in airport activities. The noise from the airport causes significant concerns in the community because Surf Air jets serve a limited number of full-time residents. The majority of full-time homeowning residents in Sierra Meadows, Prosser, and other areas in the flight zones do not utilize the airport and cannot relate to the current issues. These people vote. I agree with these comments and am relating them to the airport board. The air show is the only opportunity now available for the community to feel part of the airport, to identify with it, and support its growth. At this point, all the residents I've spoken with do not support any further growth of the airport due to the jet noise and their belief that the airport has nothing to offer them. That includes the majority of business owners, as the folks that do not utilize Surf Air tend to spend their money in North Star rather than coming into town to patronize our local shops and restaurants. Please note that this is from my informal conversations and survey of homeowners' attitudes with the growth of the airport. I therefore encourage the board to include the air show in its regular annual events. Russ Wilbert, why would anyone cancel it? Trinky Watson, absolutely in favor of the Truckee Air Show. Great event for the community. Nick Bizago, please continue the air show. It's been a great event that I have volunteered for and my kids look forward to every year. Mike Cohen, dear airport board members, I strongly support a dynamic as opposed to static air show. As a retired engineer, it's vitally important to show aspiring engineers and the general public what aircrafts can do. We need to not only show aircraft on the ground, but to demonstrate their capabilities. This is a chance to inspire future generations. Rachel Duncan, I grew up in Truckee since the late 1980s. The only news you'd ever hear about the Truckee airport was bad news. Plane crashes and the occasional noise complaint noise complaint are what come to mind. Since moving back home almost 4 years ago, I was surprised at how positively the airport was perceived in the public eye. Everyone loves the playground, Red Truck, and the air show. The community turned out for the air show is massive, and it inspired a love and curiosity for aeronautics in my young son. In fact, he's been asking about the air show ever since. Since COVID, 2 air shows have been canceled, and again, the main news that dominates the community is the negative effects of the airport. The multiple crashes over the past couple years, paired with the increasing jet traffic, is putting a sour taste in people's mouths. Why would you want to make a decision that would further pit the local community against you? Do you want to be the board that disappoints thousands of local children? Do you really want to cancel something that is loved by so many after 2 years of cancellations and disappointments? You have a chance to bring some real joy back into our community by continuing to put on the air show. Now more than ever, we need unifying events that bring this community together. We don't need more cancellations and polarization. Michael Ryan. As a family residing in Truckee with 2 young boys, I would like to implore all who vote on this to please continue with the air show. We attended in 2019, and it was just a wonderful experience. Both seeing the aerial displays, but also getting to go inside some of the aircraft and even meet the military pilots of the Osprey. It was just beyond cool to attend and experience the air show as a family. And the fact that it was a free event put on by our own community made it all that much better. When the air show was scheduled for this past summer, we were again beyond excited that in a time of such irrational fear and cancellations of just about everything else, that we could look forward to some sense of normalcy with the air show returning. We all know that sadly that did not happen, but if there were any doubts among your members about the benefit of the show to our local community, to the aviation industry, and the history of aviation, please know that it is viewed as a wonderful event and will be greatly missed should short-sightedness bring about its cancellation. Please continue with the air show. It's from Linda Todd. Dear TTAD board and staff, I agree with the proposed June 2022 air show. Many very successful air shows were held in June at the Truckee Tahoe Airport. I look forward to this opportunity to enjoy the air show with our community and for community vendors to have the chance to show the many positive things they do. From Kathy Johnson, I support the return of the Truckee Air Show and Family Festival. Barbara Wong, the air show is an event enjoyed by many and especially important in such crazy times when we've all had to give up many enjoyments. Please do not cancel due to the unfortunate crashes. Risk is inherent in everything we do. We cannot trade all pleasures for risk avoidance. Greg Hines. Contrary to many negative comments, the annual air show in Truckee brings the community together. I have lived in Truckee and the Lake Tahoe area since 1980, 42 years. My children and grandchildren go to the air shows, not because we drag them there, but because they get really excited about the activities and aircraft they can do, see, and go into. They get to meet pilots, law enforcement, military, and much more. Please do not cancel the Truckee Air Show. Cindy Crawford. Please vote for the Truckee Air Show to continue. I fully support it as a resident of Incline Village. It is good for our community to have this event. Fred Zapponi. As past air show chairman, current air show volunteer, and hangar tenant, I encourage the board to approve the continuation of the air show. The air show is the district's premier open house event and serves to present the district in a most favorable light to the community at large. Additionally, the air show serves to benefit local nonprofits. from Jonathan Sorger. I want to write in favor of actually flying planes at this year's air show. I went as a kid, and it led to a lifetime love of aviation. I went on to become a scientist and attribute much of it to my parents taking me to these shows. I was fascinated with the aerodynamics of planes and flight and took related courses in college. I look forward to continuing to take my own kids. From Lee Golden, Air Show. Please approve the air show as it was done in years past. I will be there in support of STEM and STEAM. Thank you. Randy Mesger, the Truckee Family Air Show has been a long, successful tradition that should continue. There are many other expenses that should be cut before this event. Lynn Stommer and family. There are very few family events in Truckee as family-friendly, community involved, motivational to children, and historical for all ages as the Truckee Tahoe Air Show. Children to grandparents enjoy it. There's something for everyone. Please keep up the great work. Tracy Cuneo. What is Truckee without the summer 2022 Truckee Tahoe Air Show? Boring. It is the kids who are suffering and need the air show and outdoor events in which they can breathe freely. Allow us to enjoy our beloved air show without masks and without requiring vaccine cards. Masking is unnecessary outdoors and has never been proven to prevent or reduce transmission outdoors, nor have the vaccines according to mountains of new CDC and world data, which I can supply if requested. We ask that you be part of the town returning to normal. We need our kids to thrive and to enjoy all summer in Truckee that Truckee offers. Thank you. Ashley and Jeremiah, parents of two young girls. Hi, the air show is one of the few free outdoor events in Truckee that's entertaining for the whole family, from young children, puppet shows, to adults, aerobatics. Please bring back this great outing this year. We could all use some entertainment these days. And that's all written public comments. And we have the first hand raised, Eric. Eric, you could unmute yourself, please.
There we go.
Eric, we're ready for your public comment if you would like to give it.
Did that work?
That's
Yes.
it.
Hello? Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. I'm just happy to see that the board is considering having an air show this year since it was canceled the last two. My dad has always taken me to air shows while I was growing up, and it's like I'd consider it a really big part of my life growing up, and I like to give that to my 6-year-old daughter and my family. So I agree with a lot of the previous commenters, and I'll just try to keep it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Hey, Victor, you're next.
Yes, I'm just, can you guys hear me all right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. This is primarily for Vice President Diamond. You mentioned that you saw in the budget there was an increase on the first aid equipment line, and it wasn't trying to hide any money. It's part of a piece of equipment that I requested. The local overseeing agencies for emergency medical services has recommended that we no longer use backboards, but we use what they call a vacuum mattress. And so I requested the purchase of that so that if we had someone with a back injury during the event, that we could use the appropriate equipment that's designated by the protocol. And so it costs between $800 and $1,000, and that's why there was that increase. Every year I get a little bit of money to buy a few pieces of equipment and also to replenish things like cardiac aspirin, some bandages that may have been used, Band-Aids, those sorts of things. So we're not trying to shift money around, that sort of stuff. It was something I specifically requested, and I wanted to make that point of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Okay, it looks like that's all the hands raised. Okay.
I'm trying to find the hand, Tom Meadows.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Oh, okay, good. Thanks. I couldn't find a hand. It's kind of cool. The costs are higher. That falls under the heading of duh. I reckon everyone knows that inflation has risen with no positive end in sight. I've even raised my rates just to try to keep up a little bit with the inflation. The air show has been a wonderful event since it was brought back to life several years ago. I wholeheartedly encourage the board to approve holding a 2022 air show and air shows every year. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you to David Love for your presentation and for answering our questions. And in the meantime, before the next meeting, we'll take a look at the contract. And hopefully we'll have all 5 of us to vote on approval. So we'll move on to the next.
That looks like there might have been one more hand. Do you want to?
Okay.
Take any more, or are we done?
Yeah, Andrew's iPhone. You can go ahead.
Hey guys, Andy Peak here. I'm calling personally and kind of professionally. I'm a pilot with CareFlight as well as a longtime resident here. I echo everybody's sentiment with kids and looking forward to it and all that stuff. An aspect that I would like to bring to it is kind of being on the other end of it. We have administrative people, professional people, and all that, but we also provide a static standby as well as with the CHP, and we're kind of off by ourselves. And the amount of people that go by us is staggering, and they come to us and they're excited. And the education that we give them as to what CareFlight provides in their backyard is huge. We also, pony up with the CHP, and people really get excited and they really come to appreciate the support, unrelenting support of the airport, of CareFlight. And I've been here since the beginning of CareFlight's relationship with the airport, and I could go on and brag for them and for us and what we've provided for this community. But it's just really neat to be able to have face-to-face with folks, and they come by and they're blown away at what literally is in their backyard. And I think at this current climate in the world, I think a positive thing is a good thing. And with the crash and all that stuff and public rhetoric, I think a feather in the cap, as my buddy Kevin Smith always says, CareFlight's a feather in the cap for the airport. And I think, without being too cheeky, I think the airport should capitalize on that and continue with the air show for many, many, many reasons. But probably the top of the list that I'm trying to get at is the services that the airport does provide in a positive light, as opposed to bringing in mega jets. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to action item number 9, the safety gap analysis presentation and acceptance.
Yeah, thank you. I'll say a couple things, and maybe I'll have Stacy in a minute just introduce Doug Downey, who's our consultant that helped us with this study. you might remember 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, we did a safety gap analysis, or our first safety gap analysis. It was super enlightening and very helpful to have a third party come in, an aviation expert, and look at our whole system and tell us where we can improve on our safety programs. And so it was time to do an update to that, see how we've done, and look at new things that may be out there that we should consider. And so we have this down for the board to accept. You can accept it. You can, just hear it. You don't have to take any specific action necessarily. But we are, as a staff, use this as a guide to help us know where we can improve, and then we try and program these things in through the course of the life of the study to improve our safety programs. And so typically on plans like this, we ask for an acceptance, but you can do whatever you feel comfortable doing. But with that, that's the action item. Stacy, do you want to talk a little bit briefly and then introduce Doug? And Doug's got a 212 slide 2-hour presentation, is what I understand. Is that right?
Air
just
Force.
A few minutes, but he'll give us a brief presentation on it. So.
It is my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Doug Downey from Falcon 16 Solutions. Doug is a retired Air Force fighter pilot. He's qualified in the F-16 Viper and the F-117 Stealth. He's an expert safety officer with numerous military and civilian qualifications, which include being a registered safety professional with the International Society of Safety Professionals. Doug has been working with the district since 2015, as Kevin said, when he completed our first safety gap analysis with Convergent Performance. He is a past airshow demonstration pilot. He's a flight instructor, and he's a true mentor for aviation safety professionals. So with that, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Stacy. Just want to confirm you can hear me.
Yes, sir.
All right. Certainly appreciate that introduction there. I'll add to that one of my favorite flights ever was a glider flight at SOAR Truckee just a few years ago. Certainly a memorable experience and one of the coolest. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and share with you, the board and the wide audience here, the summary of this report. And what I would like to do is give a brief summary on the outline of the report, the method and the process and the overall summary, and then answer any questions that you may have and have a discussion around the report itself. And Kevin, I deleted that 250 slide PowerPoint presentation. With that said, I certainly want to thank the airport staff up front, Kevin, the directors, and certainly Stacy. A tremendous relationship that I've been allowed to have with all of you since this time 6 years ago and all the way. And even though the original gap analysis was done in 2015, I have had the opportunity to have several engagements out there with the airport, and most recently this last year in 2021. So again, appreciate that. I want to mention a couple of things in the report, and like I said, and then we'll go there. The concept of executing a 5-year gap analysis evaluates the efficiency and the effectiveness of the SMS pillar. There's 4 pillars, and the one that we're looking at here is assurance. And assurance is the quality piece. This is not an audit, so this is not balanced against any regulatory guidance, although there is regulatory guidance that was referenced. It's not a check the box, are you in compliance, are you not in compliance? It really is about growth and where the airport has grown over the years in my specific experience since 2015. And when we came out in 2015, in my previous company, we were able to look back even before 2015. But certainly when I came out this year, and worked with the staff, and from last summer through I should say last spring through the summer, worked on this, and I'll talk about exactly what we did here in a second. It was really about the maturity of your safety management system. That is the system itself, the tool itself, really the engine of your safety culture, which feeds into the overall culture of the airport. That system has matured, and it's not a matter of is it immature, is it extremely mature? It's about growth, and that gap analysis is, where were you in 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19, and where are you now today in 20 and now 21? And where hasn't the airport grown as expected? What's changed? Whether it's the increase in operations, the dynamic change of staff members, the increase in staff members, even the relationship with the community. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the 2 unfortunate accidents that occurred this year. in June and July. I was well aware of them. In fact, I think I was on the phone trying not to interrupt or distract, but I was talking to Hardy and Stacy pretty quick after both of those incidents. I have paid very close attention to those, the NTSB reports, the preliminary and the factual findings. And so I just want to say, one, my work in this was done before that, but I have kept a keen eye on those two accidents, how the airport responded, the NTSB report, and certainly am sympathetic and in tune to the impact on the community, certainly with the Challenger accident itself. And some of you may be asking, some of you may have received these questions. Kevin and I have had lengthy discussions on this. And that question that floats out there, even for some who might be listening into this today, who aren't on the board. But the question is, are you safe? Is this a safe airport? We've had 2 accidents in a short amount of time, and it was even brought up in the earlier discussion about air shows. My answer to that as a safe, I don't like the term safety expert, but that's what's next to my name at times. I've been doing safety since 1994. Like Stacey said, I've been a pilot. I've been involved in my own safety mishaps. But my answer to that question is the Truckee Tahoe Airport in operation safe? The answer is absolutely. No one accident, no 2 accidents, or the lack of accidents indicate whether or not the airport is safe. It is a comprehensive, all-inclusive measurement, if you will, a barometer that looks at the culture, looks at the operations. If you look at the amount of operations that go on there every day, every week, every month over the last year, it's significant. I want to recognize that both those accidents were tragic. Lessons will come out of both of those. I don't believe from the preliminary reports that the airport was contributory in any way other than being there and being open for operations. So again, I just want to say that up front and to avoid the question of what were you doing when the accidents happened or afterwards. Again, this report, all the efforts were complete by then. With that, I believe the board members have received a copy of the report. I don't know if you have a copy of it in front of you, but I just want to point out the 6 areas that we're focused on. The first was a document review, and I was given access to specific documents at the airport. And I went through them to look at where are they in relationship to this growth of the safety system, the safety management system, the safety culture, operations, management decisions, new strategies. Online surveys. So there were 3 surveys conducted, and the first survey group was the board, stakeholders, and the public. We had 47 responses in that category with 11 questions. The next survey went out to employees, as defined, all working under Kevin. That consists of 10 questions and 24 responses. And the third survey was for operators at the airport and tenants. And we received 74. So 145 survey results, which gave us qualitative and quantitative data. Basically, they answered our questions in the survey, and then there was an opportunity to provide free text written comments. And we looked at all those. And then there were also interviews at with the formal and informal interviews with airport staff, some of the board members. And then my observations was a fourth element, a deep dive with Stacy into the SMS and how it's used. And finally, but not least, was the gap analysis tool of excellence, which is more of an audit. It does look at about 80 to 90 items, and to look at are they best practices, are the regulatory requirements, just to make sure that we weren't missing anything. And that's the comprehensive approach to all of this. In the report, page 9 to 22 focuses on the meat and the potatoes of this, and that was the findings. There were 8 major findings. When I say major, that doesn't mean that they were major on the risk scale, that they were they posed any detrimental aspect, but they're major findings, and then there are other findings. There were 8 of those majors, and there were 2 of the others in the report. I'm happy to say that none of the findings were found to be of high risk, and they're all of manageable risk levels. So with that said, I would like to open it up for questions and discussions with the board. So if anyone, I'm not sure what order you want to go in, Catherine, or if you just want to open it up for questions, but want to answer any that you may have at this time.
Yeah, why don't we go around? I'll start with Rick Stevens. He's at the top of my screen.
Yeah, I'm last to vote. Why would you call on me first? I had a somewhat difficult reading this report. I have a copy of it here. It was voluminous, and at the end of reading most of it, I couldn't figure out what you were recommending. And I realized there is a one-page recommendation, but even I read that and I had no idea. So I'd really like to have a short summary of what this says. And my other question to Kevin is, how much did this cost? That's my comment.
Kevin, if you want me to answer the first part of that, I will.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Rick, starting on page 9 through 22 is a list of the findings, all 10, the 8 major and the 2 findings of other significance. Each one of those findings is broken up in a detailed fashion. There is the finding itself, the risks assessment, and then the recommendation. Behind the recommendation is the discussion around all of that. So there is associated information.
I got that, and I got lectured by Stacy, as she can do, about that very same thing. I still am a little lost in this, and I really have no idea what you're recommending.
Yes, sir. So there's a recommendation with all 10 of those. We can go through each one of those if you would like.
No, I would not like.
Okay.
What would you like?
I'd like somebody else to talk because I'm very dissatisfied in, to me, an executive summary is an executive summary, not 26 pages. So I can't vote on this because I don't know what it says. And I actually tried.
Rick, do you by chance have the copy in front of you? On page 2, on that page is the executive summary.
Right here.
Yes, sir. So that one-page executive summary does cover the big picture assessment of this. And like I said, it goes into detail starting with page 9.
Maybe I can add one thing. I do know that this is some of this information may be new for some on the board. At least for Stacy and myself and others on staff, this is some stuff that we live in, particularly SMS when we're getting into next level safety promotion and some of the things it talks about. So it makes a lot of sense to me. So and I can if we need to have another meeting on it and break it down, there's a lot of good information.
I'm glad it makes sense to you. You're in charge.
Yeah, well, and I really liked the last one, and we did a lot of the things that were in the last one, and that's why we did this one. So at least I wanted to put that out there from a staff perspective. Myself and Hardy, he's also gone through this in intimate detail, and from a staff perspective, we're satisfied with it, and we feel like we've got our marching orders and know what Doug and his background is asking us as an agency to do. In the future, if you need, or I can break this down in more layman's terms and present it to the board. But I just wanted to throw that out there that I'm pretty jacked about it. I think it's actually a really good report.
Well, good. I'm glad you're jacked about it. I wouldn't vote to hear it again.
All right.
If you're on top of it,
we just wanted to make sure you knew it was out there. Really. So.
Yeah, I got it right here.
Yeah, I know you do, Rick.
Rick, towards the end here, Rick, I will point out 3 primary action items that really mirror the executive summary, but they may give more detail into what you're looking for, sir.
Next
Right.
director.
David Diamond, do you have comments or questions?
I do have a comment, and in a way, I kind of agree with Rick. To be honest with you, and I looked at this before the last meeting, I was hoping to get out of the executive summary everything I needed, and I didn't. So I read, I went through the entire thing and tried to get from that. And I was able to, I think I was able to infer that this is actually pretty good news, that we're in good shape. Stacy's done a great job and everything that we're, and it seems like now that was in fact right. One question I have for you, Doug, and then I've got a question for Stacy. The question I have for you, Doug, is where would you, of all this, the times you've done this for other airports, are you comfortable ranking this in terms of what what shape we're in? Are we average? Are we way above average? Are we, I mean, in comparison to what you've seen elsewhere? Because I having never seen this for another airport, I don't know, maybe most airports are very safe or most airports are not very safe. Where would we fall?
Sure, Dave. That's a great question and an often asked question. So to put that into context, I wouldn't want to compare the Truckee Tahoe Airport to any other airport other than itself and where it has been over the last 6 years. Now, you could, in terms of type of operations, number of operations, even number of events or mishaps, you could compare in various ways. When I look at it from through a safety lens, Truckee Tahoe is above average, and I would even favor well above average, and for a couple reasons. For one, you have a safety management system. And Kevin, as a general manager and the leader here, has seen the importance and the value of that, and over the years invested in the initial prospect in 2015 and has continued to invest in this with time, with resources, with exercises, et cetera, bringing in all the first responders of the 2 counties, everyone that would respond to the airport for any reason. And so that is an element of the overall safety culture. Within the data, within the analysis of the surveys, we also find the behavioral side. Are the employees behaving, not so much behaving, but what is their approach to safety? And I've been there plenty of times, and I have a keen observation every time I'm there. And I see employees who put safety first. They put the safety of the airport, all the operators, all the passengers, all the visitors, even the folks who sit on the picnic table. So that's another indicator through the surveys themselves, and then the conversations I've had. So, Dave, if that answers your question, again, above average to well above average, could you regress back to the mean? Most certainly. Could you advance and improve? Absolutely. And that's what's written in the report here. It gives the highlighted options to Kevin and the staff, and of course you as the board, to take what's recommended here and act upon them as you see fit, to what degree you see fit. Some of them require an investment, not always dollars, but it might be headcount, which is dollars, and it might be different strategies or considering things a different way. The other aspect of this is the SMS itself, the tool, the reporting tool. So the number one indicator of a healthy safety system is, are individuals within the organization and surrounding the organization willing to report hazards? Are they willing to raise their hand and say, I made a mistake, I made an error. I think somebody else could make this mistake or error, so I want everyone to know about it. That's a strong indicator of a healthy safety culture. And I truly believe that's the case there at the Truckee Tahoe Airport with the staff, with the operators, with the tenants, and even in the community, and certainly with all of you on the board.
Okay, and then my last question for Stacy, are you happy with this report, and does this report give you the information you need?
Yes, sir, it does.
Then I'm good.
This is a well put together, well thought out report, and it gives more advice than I could ever ask for. Good marching orders.
That's all for me. Thank you both.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mary, it's your turn.
Well, I was, Kevin, go back to Rick's question. How much did this cost?
I don't have that right in front of me. It was about a year ago that we started the process. We could get it, though. The quote. I don't have it in front of me.
And I guess what it comes down to is what Kevin, you've read it, Stacy, you've read it. What actions do you see you would choose to implement having understood this? Pick me 3.
Well, I'll start. So I really like, there's a whole section on just culture, on the just safety culture. And, if you kind of go through that and read that section, that's something that we're pretty excited, or at least I am, of building on, kind of what Doug was talking about of making sure our folks know that the SMS system and reporting safety, and that's okay. And we've had employees, I was one of them. I submitted an SMS report on myself when I cut off an airplane because I didn't look a direction I should have, so we can put those in and then we can learn from those. When I was out in my truck, so making sure people know that that's what the system's for. It's not punitive. It's not a way to get yourself fired. And building on that is one of the things it talked about. It also talked about next level safety promotion. How do we reward our employees for participating in this program, because we have some employees that'll put a lot of them in, and there's some that very rarely do. So how do we build that and balance that? Those are a couple of things. SMS in itself can be a little bit confusing, but the SMS workflow, there's some stuff in there on how that goes too. We have a unique system here at our airport where we have Hardy and his team that handle aviation safety kind of above the airport in the airspace. We have Stacy that does a lot on the airfield, and then like with OSHA, with our occupational safety. And so we blend those two, or at some airports, much larger airports, those might be in the same person. So there's some pointers in there on how we can work through that and how it might be, how we can improve there. So those are just a couple of things. I don't want to take a lot of time. Stacy.
Mary, I've actually already started on some of the points that Doug has put into this report.
Tell me too.
I've already started on a safety management system, that SMS SOP, so that people can understand the process that I'm going through, understand that it's very strategic. And I think that's one of the next level SMS development that I'm really interested in. And then the second thing is getting into the SRA a lot more. Doug provided a safety risk matrix. That is a fillable matrix, and I'm incorporating that into many of the reports. So that also takes obviously some training for our people from multiple levels, starting with directors all the way to our guys in the line doing the hard job.
So this is the red to blue boxes.
Yes,
Okay.
the red, yellow, green. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I saw that at a safety stand down from the FAA at Vegas, and have brought it. I think it's a great idea for publishing it out to the pilots. It's that they do this. They do it, but it puts it in paper for them, and I think that would be really useful.
Sure. And this one is airport specific, and it's for the actions that we do as employees on this airport. And that is very specific to our SMS. And finally, I'd like to say that the last thing that we've been doing is critical incident communication. I have sat down with Doug. He did this with Hardy 5 years ago. Dave Hoffman and I have both sat down and did a 2-hour training on critical incident communication with Doug. So we've already started down all 3 of those paths.
Okay. Great.
Great. I read this report, and I have to say I didn't really understand a lot of the language and the terms, but what I got from it was that I was really glad that we have so many systems in place already, and I was I learned a lot. I thought it was very interesting, and I'm glad to hear, Stacy, that this is helpful to you, because frankly, I don't really care how much it costs because it's safety, and if this is a helpful tool for the airport to be safer, then it's money well spent.
Yes, ma'am. And I'd also like to add into that, we're still using the safety gap analysis from 5 years ago. We can only implement so much over that time. And I was thankful to Doug that he didn't actually repeat some of the things that we already know that either we can still work on or work towards.
One thing I could add also, and we'll get you the fee, what that was, but that also, Doug, that's a retainer for a year also for advice and counsel, and we've called him on a few things about, what do you think about this, Doug? What do you think about that? That's all part of the fee for service, and so we appreciate that.
Great. Okay, so what are you asking from us?
We just wanted you to have it, because sometimes we have these reports that we as staff use and will reference, and then it'll be, what is that? What are you talking about? And so we wanted to get it in front of you and show it to you. And typically with things like this, we're asking typically the board to accept, but you can do kind of whatever you want with it. Doug, did you have a question?
No, Kevin, if I could make a closing comment before you move away from this. But I'm sorry to interrupt you there.
No, I was done.
Oh,
go ahead.
I think it's a great question from Rick and Mary. You know, what's the return on investment here? What's the ROI of safety? It's real easy for Kelly on the business side to give the ROI of everything that you procure, you invest in, even the people, right? If you increase headcount or not, it's easy to calculate the ROI on the business side of the business, but not necessarily the safety side of the business. So the question might be, are we not spending enough because of 2 events in June and July, or did we spend too much? It's a common question, and when we talk about the maturity, back to your question, David, where do you compare to other airports? I certainly appreciate the question and the critique about the investment. And back to Catherine's point, here's what I'm confident of, absolutely confident of. The SMS that you have had in place since 2015 and have in place right now today and will have in place tomorrow has prevented more than 1 injury. It's prevented more than 1 fatality not involved with aircraft. And it certainly has prevented other aircraft incidents, whether close calls or outright events or mishaps. I know that for a fact. Could I put my finger on it? No. But the fact that you have the operation you have, the new tower in place, everything else that's been implemented and added on, value added to the airport over the years. And back to David, your question, there's a staff here that is extremely knowledgeable. In my experience, going into other airports, and when I ask, let's look at your SMS, and this is no exaggeration, I have seen where it's a 3-ring binder on the back of somebody's shelf, and that's their SMS. They printed it out, the free copy, and they tell the auditors, yes, we have an SMS, but it sits there and it collects dust, and it's a waste of 50 pages of double-sided print. But when you talk about Kevin and Hardy and Stacy and Dave and Mike and all the other folks here, I very rarely have had a conversation where I had to start from scratch and explain anything about safety. They're extremely knowledgeable. Their initiative is well above average when it comes to safe, effective operations. And I know, Hardy, I'm not even sure how many hours you and I have logged over the phone in your office or having conversations. But on the flight side, you have someone who is very knowledgeable, engaged, and has tremendous initiative on safety and understands the strategic piece of this next to the implementation that goes on every day at the airport. You can't control the operators or the visitors that come to the airport. You can't control their behaviors, but you certainly can influence them. And I believe the staff here, starts with safety, as Stacy as the safety manager, has a tremendous influence on every pilot that comes in there, every car that drives out on the ramp to deliver passengers and luggage and little dogs, to everyone that works there, whether they're in the back shop on the far side of the airport or they're out plowing snow in the middle of a snowstorm at 2 a.m, to include the people that come to the red truck and eat outside and observe it. And then what you all just talked about, the air show. There's a significant influence that the employees led by Kevin have on the airport. And I just want to make note of that, because that truly is a test that I look at. It's a litmus test, not only the knowledge and the passion, but what's the influence on the community and then the operators. And so I hope that clarifies, David, any question you had, the comments, Rick, Mary, you had about cost, et cetera. And Catherine, I certainly appreciate your comment there.
The budget line item in the 2021 budget, there was $50,000 for a study like this. So we'll get you the number on it.
Kat, I raised my hand.
Rick, what would you like to say?
Well, I'm really pleased that Kevin and Stacy are all over this. And I also agree with you. Safety is number one, and you don't care, and neither do I, what we spent on it. I'm glad I heard the number. I just wish I could have understood it a little easier, and maybe I'll give it another try. But safety is numero uno. Thank you.
We do want the layperson, to be able to pick this up and understand it. So Stacy and Doug and Hardy and I will work on the executive summary and update that page to. I know where you're going, Rick, and we'll fix that.
I have a question in terms of this is safety on the field, not in the air. Pretty much.
It kind of encompasses all of this.
I'm talking to Doug.
Yeah, Mary, it's all of it. It's safety out on the ramp. It's safety back in the workshop. It's safety out in your parking lot. It's safety when the employees and the visitors drive to the airport and drive away from the airport.
Okay.
And certainly in the airspace above it. When they get handed off from Sacramento or Reno and they start talking to Truckee Tower, there's an influence there. And that's the professionalism of the Truckee Tower controllers. And when they come and land and the marshalers that come out and help them marshal into the chalks and how they're treated inside the building. So, Mary, I know it sounds cliche, but it is all comprehensive, all holistic. It affects every aspect and element to include how the community sees the airport. And those were some of the questions we asked in the survey. What is your perception of the airport's operation and the safety element of it? And there was tremendous feedback there, and it's in the report. Rick, for you or any of the other board members, as Kevin said, I'm on retainer, and even when it goes beyond that, I will answer my phone. I'll come out there and visit. I love visiting the airport in the area. Rick, I will, if you would like, I will sit down with you one-on-one on a call, and we can go over specific parts of this report if you'd like. Just let me know.
I'll give it another try on my own.
Yes, sir.
And talk to Kevin, and I'll let you know.
Yes, sir.
Because I don't know. I'm not sure you want to be in a one-on-one meeting with me, right, Stacy?
Sir, here's what I assure you. There's no fluff in here. Absolutely. That's not why it's, I'm not even sure what the page count came out to be. But it was very methodical.
64.
Yes, sir. It was very methodical. And back to Kevin's point, I know he has used the previous report from 2015 as a guiding tool over the years. I've seen it on his desk. It's marked up. Kevin, I'm not sure if there's a coffee stain on it or not, but
it's over here.
There you go.
Got it right there.
And that's the intent of this, not to be all digested at once, not to be used all at once. But I know, speaking with Hardy and Dave and Stacy, that they routinely have gone back to that report, and I'm certain they will do with this report as well. And I will be there to consult along the way as well.
I have one last comment. I work at power plants, very high temperatures. I understand this idea of the SMS and not being afraid to report things, and I think it's great. I have to say to the other board members about safety at any cost, I cannot support that the government buys tires for people because they have bald tires, because that would be safer when they're on I-80. So I agree with safety, but there is a place there where we as a government entity are not responsible for other people's decisions. And I cannot say safety at any cost on the government's back. And my example is buying tires for anybody who wants to travel on I-80 when there's a snowstorm. There are people who make bad choices, and you cannot make it safe for them.
Can I just interject there? Because I think that to sort of put a cap on what was just said there, if I can, Doug, and you can tell me if I'm wrong. This is a report about the scope of influence with regard to safety of our operations. So if a pilot comes through here and turns final and stalls and spins, that has nothing to do with the airport. That, we don't own the air, we don't own, it's like that. It's just, this is about the scope of our operations and what we're doing and whether those operations are affecting safety adversely or positively.
Yes, sir. You're spot on. Now, back to the influence of Mary's comment about you can't control their decisions. You certainly can influence their decisions. So part of my survey and outreach was to pilots that I know who fly throughout the Western United States. And I tried to find who has been to Truckee in the last 2 years or even sooner and how often. And then they shared names and numbers with other pilots who had been there. And I asked them one question. and this really was for me to understand going into this, because I'm not there every day, I'm not there often enough. But my question was, what do you think about when you fly in the Truckee Tahoe Airport? And here was a consistent answer. Now, and I'm paraphrasing, it wasn't always the same answer, but it was, you know what? I fly a little different and I act a little different. And that kind of threw me back, and I asked, well, what do you mean? And they mentioned some other airports, which I won't mention on this call. I certainly would to Kevin or Hardy or Stacy behind closed doors. But they said, there's just something about the Truckee Tahoe Airport that when you come in there, you're clear and crisp on the radios, you know the procedures. And if I haven't been there in a while, I go straight to the website and look at some of the tutorials. So Hardy, those videos are being looked at and used, as you know. So David, to your point, yes, and Mary, what you said about decisions, you want to influence those decisions and influence those behaviors. I believe, in my assessment, the safety culture, the approach to safety at the airport, the board's support of this sends a message, a strong message, that if and when you come to land and park your airplane and eventually depart and take off and leave, that you need to cross your T's and dot your I's. And when an individual does commit what I'm just going to generalize, a pilot mistake, a pilot error in the airspace surrounding the airport, it is not necessarily indicative of the safety culture or the safety status of the airport.
So here's an idea. This just came to me. It's related, so I get to say it. With regard to that scope of influence, if a pilot takes off on a hot summer day and is gross overweight and turns and stalls and goes into the ground, this is not our fault. On the other hand, if our AWOS was to report the density altitude on those hot days, that we could say that we in fact were having a positive impact on something that was really not our obligation to begin with. We expect the pilots to understand that stuff, but that's an example of where we might be able to do something to increase that margin of safety.
Yeah, Dave, there's great promotion right now about the high density altitude scenario of the Truckee Tahoe Airport. It's on the webpage, it's talked about. And I know some of the staff members here have even approached private pilots and said, are you sure you're not over gross weight? You realize it's X temperature outside and the density altitude is reading such and such. I know, and I think you can do just about everything up to pulling the keys out of the aircraft or not pulling the chocks. At the end of the day, as Mary said, it's about decisions. Now, back to Kevin's point about a portion of this, what's new in this report and it's recommended is the introduction and inclusion of a just culture. And a just culture is a methodical way of applying accountability across the board, whether it's an HR issue with an employee, whether it's an issue with a tenant, or maybe a visiting pilot. In this case, you want to look at the accountability, and it's not about blame. So what piece of the decision does that pilot, as you just described it, Dave, what piece does he own? But what accountability does the airport have? What responsibility does the airport have to have an accurate AWOS, to have a promotion about the dangers, the hazards that airport poses in mountainous terrain, et cetera? Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And if I can add on to that too, David Diamond, our O&M staff are trained to actually ask those same questions to the pilots too. They will challenge them. When they say fill it to the tabs on a really hot day, they will confirm with them and make sure that they understand density altitude.
That's also because I do feel, I did my training in San Carlos, and one of the takeaways from that was that Truckee was the airport little airplanes went to die. That was the conventional wisdom down there. And then when I got up here and I realized that's actually not the case, that was an oversimplification of ignoring guidelines with regard to density altitude. So I do appreciate that, because I feel like, especially for pilots who are not used to being here, I'm the reverse. I take off out of Hayward at full power and my airplane goes shooting up and I'm like bashing it down to stay out of the class, Charlie, because I'm not used to it climbing like that. And I feel like it's the reverse for pilots from the sea level who come up here. It's that reminder that your airplane is a different airplane up here. So that I love that they do that when people are fueling, because I do feel like Kevin mentioned to me today when we were talking about the density altitude indicator by the fuel tank. And color me a complete idiot, it never occurred to me that the reason it was there was to remind pilots not to fill the tanks. I just looked at it like, oh, that's another place to look at density altitude, but I never made the connection. So I love that.
Yeah, that's where that's why it's there.
I recognize it's a little intrusive sometimes, but I think you can be intrusive when you're working on the idea of being safe.
Okay.
Good.
So what would you like from us, Kevin?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, if you'd like to accept the study, I think that's what we were looking for from a staff perspective. If you're all comfortable with it by consensus, we're already starting to work on some of these things, and that's fine too. We just wanted to make sure ultimately that you had it and you heard from Doug, who's our safety consultant that we go to frequently.
Can I just say, the one thing at the beginning of this meeting, a document that Kat brought that I loved was the idea of going to public comment before we make a motion. I would love to always be able to do that, because I think it's helpful.
I'd like to make a comment to Kevin. This is an example, a preview to the review. If you want this approved, you should say that.
I want it approved, Rick. I want you to accept it.
Thank you, Kevin.
You're right. Please accept this plan. I think we'll be better for it as an organization. There's nothing to fear in it. We have, from a staff perspective, have been through it in intimate detail. So
we got it.
Work with it, yeah. So.
All right. Is there?
Go on. I'm not sure that, the little bit I did get about extra bodies, I'm not sure I can support that. So just, that's a heads up.
As far as, there's a recommendation in there of looking at how we staff our safety office. It's a recommendation.
Right. And maybe adding bodies
budget process and all that. But again, we're asking for our consultant to give us his honest opinion in that, and I think we want that, but we don't have to do everything that's in it.
Right.
And Kevin, if I could comment there,
yeah.
Mary, there were no findings of high risk and there were no findings of non-compliance. That would have been right up front in the executive summary. So everything behind the executive summary is a recommendation.
Right.
Okay. All right. Do we have any public comment on this issue?
I have no written public comment, and as of now, I don't see any hands raised in Zoom.
I would like to make a motion. Is that okay?
Yep.
I move to accept the Safety Gap Analysis 5-year update report provided to serve as a guiding document for continued improvement of the district's safety program.
Is there a second?
I will second it.
All right, roll call. Vice President Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Odette is absent. President Rolfe.
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you. Again, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Stacy. Okay, so moving on to item 10, review of proposed goals for 2022, discussion and possible action. Kevin, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure thing. So we had talked about, going back through the budget process of kind of crafting some goals. Not kind of, but crafting goals for our district for this coming 2022 year. We had this allocation study going on, and it was discussed that, hey, let's get that done in January, and then if staff could provide some recommendations for goals we would get that on the agenda as soon as we can. So here we are in January, and here is a list of proposed goals, kind of in similar fashion to, in at least the format, to last year, of kind of breaking down where I think we're at. There's obviously a lot of ways we can go with this, and I'm really excited to kind of hear the board's input on this. We can take some time to work on it. We can also workshop it. We usually, in years past, we've adopted goals either in February or March for the next or for the year. And so with that, everyone has them. We can go through them, but everyone's read them. So with that, I'll end my presentation. I can put them up too if we want to put them on a screen share, but I think everyone's got it in front of them.
Oh, got it.
I can talk about each one, but I don't want to. I know you don't read them.
Is this something that should be workshopped and Teresa should be with us?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that, Kat and I. That's a good question for the rest of you of how you want to handle the fact we're missing a member.
Workshop.
I agree.
If you look at Mary's one pager, there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, we could spend 2 hours on this right now, and I'd rather have a workshop and have Teresa here. What are you shaking your head for, Mary?
I agree. I don't want to do it. I'm barely here now. I've dropped to 55%.
So I recommend that we do have a workshop on this goals. There's a lot of stuff in here.
All right. So February?
No, I'd say I'd like to see it, put out a doodle and see if there's something.
No.
Oh yeah, February.
I'm saying
like I say, it's got to be February. Hello.
So, yeah, can I just ask quickly? Does anyone have any travel plans in the next 2 weeks? If I send out a doodle,
no travel.
Everyone's going to be around, and if you are traveling, it'll be a Zoom meeting. So, okay, yeah, I'll get something out on that.
And just in the sense of what I distributed to everybody, because y'all know I work in the weeds. I'm a task person and not a more global person. But these are the things that I see that fit into goals. And so Kevin and we have as a group need to decide, do you agree with what I'm saying or do you not? So.
Can I add one other thing? And it's also timely. I actually like the idea of postponing it because my staff and I, there are 4 or 5 of us, got a lot of strategic planning advice and counsel from this conference that we were at, the Swahi summer short course they did. And it's really good stuff. And so I want to kind of recraft this a little bit, and I think it'll be a good, productive conversation about maybe more strategic planning along with goals.
And I would ask the other board members to put down in writing where you think we're going, because it's a lot easier to work from that than it's easy to bloody up paper with the original ideas than to talk about it. If we've got written down ideas from everybody, we can then group it and build from there and save a lot of time.
True.
Which was exactly what my question was going to be. Are we? Because I had like a lot to say about this, and I kind of feel like would it, like, can we provide this input to you, Kevin, and then you distribute it to the board before that public meeting, or is that a brown?
Yeah. So tomorrow we'll get a doodle going. I'll get some folks to help me do that, and and then a few days before that meeting, or as soon as I can, we'll gather that up and send it out in a board packet for the meeting.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like today, you sent a list of concepts that Director Hetherington had provided. Should we provide those now for everybody to see? Because otherwise, it seems like we're kind of skewed.
Yeah, I think so. And Josh, help me. I was kind of going through Brown Act, but if they send me stuff, I can send it out to everybody. They just can't talk about it with each other.
We should be able to do it that way. And Kevin and I can kind of brainstorm, David, to make sure we don't run into an inadvertent Brown Act issue.
Super. Okay, great.
But yeah, you can send it to me for sure. So I would do your list, get it to me, and then Josh and I will make sure the way we're getting it out to you is Brown Act compliant. So you're all looking at this and not discussing it. But there's no Brown Act issue sending it to me.
All right, sounds like a plan. All right, moving forward before we lose Mary completely. Let's see, board committee assignments and ad hoc committee reports. Is there anything anyone would like to highlight? We've all read the reports. Or would anyone like some clarification anywhere?
We have a meeting tomorrow with the master plan folks. Don't forget, right? It's at
Not 10, 1.
One
$1
o'clock.
Yeah.
We're going to get that wrapped up, I'm hoping.
And the allocation study, we're going to be getting a draft with different scenarios, probably early next.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I'll have
week.
it this week. And then we have a memo that answers a lot of the questions that came up on January 5th. And then we're getting, we can talk about it now, but Rick had asked, about the tower separation. So there's going to be 3 appendices. There's one in there that'll have all these numbers with the FAA funding. And then there's a third one that has the tower and ADSB split 50-50 rather than 90-10. So everyone will have it. As you're making decisions on rates, fees, and charges, that'll all be available.
Which I requested.
Yeah.
The 50-50.
And when you get that, you're going to be giving that to David and I. And yeah,
so
to look through.
Yes. Yeah, we can do that. I'll send it to the ad hoc committee, then we'll send it out to everybody.
I have another question that might fall into the category of legal question. At what point, now that that has been presented to the whole board, at what point is the ad hoc committee legally obsolete?
Yeah, that's a question that we should talk about, because the ad hoc committee was set up to do the allocation study, and I guess our intent is once that third appendix is in and it's approved, and then we send that out, that would be the end of the committee, at least what they were charged with doing.
And I agree with Kevin. I think at that point the committee's met its what it was accomplished for, and it would go away.
Okay. I just wondered about
And then on that, sorry.
I was just going to say, because I started thinking about the fact that now it's being amended based on the entire board's desire on it. And that's why I was kind of thinking when Mary was saying that something is going to be sent to us first, I just wanted to make sure that legally that's okay because it's now not a whole board thing.
Yeah, that's okay. Still, the ad hoc committee can still help us as we finalize, but once it's finalized, then the ad hoc committee kind of disbands at that point.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Then we're going to be doing, over the next 3-4 months, we're going to be doing rates, fees, and charges every month. And so from a staff perspective, we're going to be working on that and bringing you forward proposals. But there's no ad hoc committee to do that. I just want to make sure that's clear. We're going to take all this data and all this information, and we're combing through some stuff, and we're going to come forward with, trying to tackle, this first part is tackling these lease rates, and then we're going to move into landing fees, other types of fees, and then the master fee schedule, overnight parking, all those things will be coming, fuel, all those things will be coming forward, including potential other options for locals, discounts for fuel that we've got.
But all of that, just for clarification, all that is beyond the ad hoc.
There's no ad hoc committee for any of that.
Got it.
It'll all be done with the full board in board meetings. That's my intent. Okay. That's what I'm doing.
All right, Kevin, do you have anything to highlight from your general manager's report?
Just really, no.
Okay.
Some fun stuff in there. Just let me look real quick. No, I don't have anything unless there's questions.
I have a comment on this, in that, your idea of we still have this pending study for cost allocation, and we still need to put our arms around it. And so the idea that you're saying you want to create this $1 per gallon discount for CAA, I think
CAA.
it's premature.
Yeah, it's not CAA.
Okay.
It was based on Peter Kirsch and Jeff Coleman have somewhat different ideas on what we can do, but we're going to work with both of them and come forward with what we want to consider, like if you have a tenant or an agreement with the airport, then as Jeff Coleman was saying, that's commonly done. If you're an airport tenant, you have a hangar, then we can give you a discount. That was the original intent. Why we didn't do that is Peter thought you better be careful with that, and we did the CAA thing. CAA grew quite large.
Okay.
Canceled that. Now we're going back with another option.
And I guess, okay, if it's not CA, just whatever, it seems premature until we put our arms around what this cost allocation, what it means. And so to me, I would like that kind of bump down the road in my mind. I don't know if the other board feels the same way.
Yeah, I was going to bring that forward in February, so I'm curious if we have it semi-ready. I still was planning on bringing it unless 3 of you don't want me to do that.
Well, I'll say, I mean, I've got a comment that is related to that, and I'm reading my comment here, and I'm relating that it's completely out of context since we didn't have the goals discussion. But if you'll bear with me, I don't think we should be having a discussion about replacing that discount. We should be having a discussion more about what is the goal of replacing the discount or having the discount in the first place. If it was to give a financial incentive or benefit to locals, some of those locals, myself included, burn avgas, not just jet fuel. And if the goal is to make the airport more palatable, more suitable, more affordable, whatever for locals, I would like to have a bigger discussion about that. That's more like as a guiding principle, that's what we're trying to do. And one of the things that we're trying to do in support of that would be a fuel discount. I'm hesitant about us going through piecemeal, like let's do a discount here, let's charge a rate here, I really think that without a cultural focus on who we are and for whom we are, and this was part of my point on the other thing that I didn't make. I feel like we're making decisions in a vacuum, and then I feel like we're kind of setting ourselves up, or future boards getting set up to come back and go, why did they make that decision? Why did they give, like, why was that leased at that rate, or why was this done at this rate, or why did this, I would love not that I necessarily want to defer this, but I would love for this to happen in the context of a bigger decision about who are we designing our services for.
Good news is that'll, if we can get it all together, we'll have our goal discussion and be able to have a conversation on that. And I don't disagree with you at all. I can go through why we did discounts before, and that we've had past boards have had conversations on that, and that's kind of what goes through my head. But I know that a lot of you weren't there. We're talking about those things, and I got to remember that. So I'm fine too. I think, David, you bring up a good point. Maybe a policy instruction or some strategy needs to precede what the actual discounts are, and so I agree with that. And we'll talk about that at this workshop.
And to remind my fellow pilots, I will not be able to vote on this. So I'm hoping that they're very vocal in their outreach to the board about what they would like to have happen. Just saying. Unless maybe I agree to never buy fuel at Truckee, then maybe I could vote on it. I don't know. I guess we have to figure.
Does that mean you can't talk about it either?
No such luck. I'm allowed to talk about it. So I had just another real quick question on item 6, which is the annual district data report update. Just question, is there a plan in place for how we're going to make the numbers available?
Yeah, so we're putting that all together. And maybe one question I had for everyone is, when we talked about doing this before, we thought maybe doing it once the annual audit is done, and then we put it out in May or June. I'm rethinking that maybe we want to do it in January when we put out our ops and comment numbers, and just put the audit from the prior year, which is only 6 months old anyways. Because I don't know how many people are anxious to get the audit, and it's kind of already been approved. So I'm kind of rethinking that a little bit, but no, to be honest, David, I haven't gotten that far as how are we going to get it out to the public to look at it. We're still kind of organizing that, but the types of things that people would like in it is kind of what I'm looking for right now as we get that organized. At least this year, we're going to do it in with the audit, but in 2023, can't believe we're talking about 2023. We might want to rethink that and just do it in January, but when we get all of our numbers together for operations.
Sounds good to me. That's all I have. Thanks.
But no, that's a good. I'll write that down as a thing to do.
Okay. Any more comments or questions on Kevin's report?
Is there another workshop you have in mind when you put that down? beyond the
So that's
goals.
a rolling agenda item that we talk about that every year in January. Is, you know, we've some boards have wanted to do those workshops, other boards have chosen not to.
Okay.
In my 11 years here, so it's a rolling agenda item to do a winter strategy workshop, and I'm hearing we're going to do one, and probably within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Operations and Maintenance Department report. Is there anything reportable? That's.
Yeah, I think Dave's just giving you. I'm not. He might. Sorry, I can't see on my screen if he's out there, but yes, he's right there.
Yeah, I'm here, Kevin. If anyone has any questions, certainly let me know.
Okay. Anybody for Dave?
Yeah.
I don't have any.
I don't have a question. I just want to say good job to the crews. That was one heck of a storm in my 30 years. It's one of the top three. And also to Stacy, noticing on the DOIs, you know, the idea of limits on the size of the wing length on the aircraft. That was very useful. So thank you to Cruz and Stacy on the DOIs.
Great. Item 14, Finance and Administration Department report. Any questions or comments for Kelly?
I just wanted to throw out quickly or Kevin, I guess, is it okay, Kat? Can I answer the question from earlier about the insurance rate?
Oh, yes. We got you a rate.
Yeah, I reached out to Scott. He reached out to the underwriter, doing a little after hours reconnaissance here. But it's looking somewhere around about 35,000. So just slightly higher.
Wait a minute. You mean 35,000 additional?
No, total.
It's about 11,000 more or 9,000 more than what we have.
Yep.
Now.
To get us to 50 million, which that seems reasonable to me. But if you guys want to chat about it, then I could move forward with that.
We could revisit that motion. Josh could probably help us with that if we want to.
Are we allowed to?
Yeah, the good news is it's on the agenda, and we can go back to that item if the board would like to reevaluate it, and we could even vote to approve the higher amount if the board decided to.
That works for me. Anybody not want to do that?
Let's do it. Do we do it now, or should we wait till the end?
Maybe we could finish the finance report and then jump back to item 6, if that's okay.
Okay. Sure. Did anyone have any questions on the finance report?
Nope.
I've used up my allocation of Kelly questions for the entire year on the allocation. I just smile and nod now. No, it was great. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. And you get better from COVID too.
I'm trying.
Me too. Whee! Little loopy.
Okay, shall we revisit item number 6?
Sorry, no, do we public comment? I think we've skipped over on the last few reports.
I don't have any public comment.
Then we're good.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the new quote of $35,000 for $50 million of liability insurance.
That's the right number, Kelly Wu?
34,920. So yes.
$34,920.
I second that motion for 34,920.
And President Rolfe, we should just make sure there isn't any additional public comment on this item because we went back to it before we vote.
Right. Is there any public comment on this?
No public comment.
Okay, roll call.
Vice President Diamond. Oh, sorry. Was that a yes?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Director Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Odette's absent. President Rolfe?
Yes.
And Director Stevens?
Yes. Thank you, Kelly.
No problem.
Yeah, good work on getting that quote.
There's an advantage to super long meetings. We get work done on in real time.
Don't go that far, please.
All right, so back to item 15, Aviation and Community Services Department report.
Hi there, Hardy Bullock with you, and just checking in to see if there's anything specific we want to talk about. I'll just make one quick note. This report had some pretty heavy background data supporting some of the items within the AVCOM report. The monthly flight track procedures update has a compendium of flight procedures that have been approved, some financial information, and I wanted to just get that to the board. So you have 30 days. We're going to bring that back at the February meeting and talk more with you about that. But I'd encourage the board to call me up and sit down and possibly talk about it or do it over a Zoom call, and I can give you more information. That document is pretty tightly packed with highly technical information, and it would be nice to talk to each of you about what's inside there. It's so if you'd like, certainly come find me or find Kevin. We can talk all about it. And then on the climb gradient, the aircraft statistics, I have a fascinating presentation that we've compiled regarding the aircraft crash statistics, and I'd like to get that to the board as soon as we're completed and give that in advance of the February meeting as well, so we can get that to you as well. And then the climb gradient analysis is another one. Pretty technical information, but I can explain it to you. We just wanted a little bit of staff guidance. We were directed by Director Hetherington. It was her idea, and the board supported the fact that we wanted to look at getting a piece together that outlined the effects of density altitude on the fleet mix that flies in and out of Truckee. So we we got that done, and now we're looking for a little bit of guidance on how we want to promote, display, or convey that information to the pilot community. So that's what I have for you tonight, and happy to answer any questions.
Who wants to?
Got questions? I'll go when I'm called.
All right, David Diamond.
I got called. See how that works? So I've got a few questions, and I have a little bit more than usual because we're looking at a year-end report. So I'm kind of like, it's interesting there. The first one is that 56 more non-EMS out of curfew ops year over year in 2021. Do we know any idea why that number jumps? That's a big number jump. Do we know any idea what is it? Is the curfew becoming unmanageable for some folks, or did people not know, or how do we think?
We had influx of tenants. Well, influx isn't the right word. We had a few tenants that can use their aircraft for commuting purposes. They signed, they did not want the incentive, and so they flew outside the curfew period. That was just in my estimate. I don't have the report in front of me, but maybe 50% of those 54 occurrences. The others, I don't have any necessary concrete data on why they occurred. Most of our curfew violations are right at the corners or the brackets of the voluntary curfew. And that's about, I think, all the information I have on that.
Okay. The next question that I've got about this is that we've got reduced traffic over the year with increased comments. If this is the third year of our comments going up, and I'm just wondering, like, have we given any thought to this? I mean, and just to put a little bit of context in here, in the last meeting when we talked about the allocation study, and we were talking about the tower 50/50 versus 90/10, and I referenced data that Mary and I were looking at. This is the data that was there. So it's like, and of course I'm a huge tower supporter, but this is an example. Like it's kind of hard to say that we're seeing an increase or a decrease in comments after the installation of the tower. We're actually seeing an increase here, and I'm really curious as to why we think we're getting them.
Yeah, I have a couple answers for you. The non-acoustical factors related to subjective disposition of commenters related to annoyance is critical. So we had 2 accidents this year. We had a tremendous amount of community outreach, and so when you put it out there for the community, and you also have these incidents within the community that brought so much attention to the airport, it really highlights the fact that we do, and Kevin says it, puts it really well, that we remind people of our existence constantly, particularly in the peak periods. That is one, I think, probably the primary driver. The second driver is the skydiving activity. So the skydiving plane was had a voluminous driver of those comments. The other piece is our peak period activity has been concentrated as we've moved across the years. So in years past, a big day may be 250 ops. That's still a pretty big day, but we get those peak period concentration of operations, and that's where you really see the comments driven. So I get the report every morning. If I look at it on Friday morning or Saturday morning or Sunday morning, you get a lot of comments in that period. And so I think those 3 factors, the 2 incidents that occurred, the skydiving activity, and that aggregation of peak period kind of concentration on our holiday weekends and some of the busy weekends in the summer are probably what's driving that comment volume.
Okay. My next 2 questions are kind of related, and they're about turboprops. So we're seeing decreased piston traffic. We're seeing increased turboprop and light jet. And my first part of the question, and I'll give you both parts and you can talk about it, is are we assuming that there are owners of pistons who are getting rid of their pistons and upgrading to turboprops? I was actually told over the weekend from somebody in the Bay Area that, and she has a flight training operation, that she's seeing that trend where people are getting rid of their piston, and keeping in mind that $1 million Cirrus is still a piston. So that they might be, folks in that price category might be getting rid of the $1 million airplane and buying a $4 million airplane. So that's my first part. My second part of that is that we're seeing an explosion of comments on turboprops, 109% versus up 2%. Their ops are up 2% and their complaints are up 109%, which is more than 100 comments throughout the year for that turboprop class. So I'm wondering, kind of like, what do we attribute to what's going on in turboprops?
I know the marketplace for used aircraft is really strong right now. I know that the kind of function of wealth that happens with our city pairs, particularly the Bay Area, is driving a lot of people to buy really nice planes. So you made a comment about Cirrus. Most of our wait list is Cirrus aircraft, $1 million single engine piston. Many of our operators that I've known for the last 15 years started with a Cirrus, and then they bought a Pilatus or a King Air, and then they buy jets, and they're buying jets, PC-24s, Phenom 300s, etc. So it is that kind of striated trend for people to move up and get a nicer, bigger, faster plane, and I think the economy is supporting that type of activity. We do have a lot of people on our list that are identified as second homeowners here, or city pairs with the Bay Area or Southern California. So again, that's perfect platform for that type of activity, that medium to light size jet or turboprop. So I can say from the marketplace, that's probably why we're seeing the jump in that activity. I don't necessarily have a concrete answer on the response or a response to the number of comments related to turboprop. I don't know. I have some ideas that come to me, but I don't think I have anything concrete on it.
Okay, but I think I guess that one of the takeaways I was trying to get to there are we in the turboprop and light jet category. It's not that we're seeing new pilots moving here; it's that the same pilots are now in a different category of airplane.
That's part of it. The other part is the PC-12 platform is a really popular charter and shared ownership model, and so Surf Air is doing it really well. But a lot of our activity is Part 135 air taxi, so that's a great platform for the Bay Area. You can put 4 people in the plane, bring the Pilatus up here, and go back. So I think a lot of the commercial, we call them commercial operators, but are really flying those turboprops, and that may be driving it as well.
Okay, and then the going back to what you'd mentioned before when we talked about the increase in comments, I'm wondering if I've been told we can figure out what percentage of comments are coming from on-field operators, commercial operators who should be familiar with noise abatement procedures. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I would love to have that broken out just so that that in a case like where we have one operator that is generating a huge amount of comments, that we don't see the comment trend skewed by one operator's impact on the community. Because I feel like when we look at these numbers, it's easy to infer that there's a really bad trend here. And then if you took those numbers out, in fact, we might not see that trend. So I don't know if the rest of the board feels that way, but I'd love to see that.
I do. I agree.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of, and it's mainly because if we have an anomalous situation, right? It's like we're like over the summer with Skydive, we had a lot of comments there, and I hate the idea that is now going to skew the entire metric because of that one thing. But the other thing. On item 3, just congratulations to Mark Covey on his completing the American Association of Airport Executives Certified Member exam. So good for Mark for doing that. And then my last comment on here is on item 6 for the climb gradient thing. It's funny because I thought about this like earlier when we were talking about the density altitude thing. If the question is what we're going to do with that data, now that we've got it, what I was thinking is like maybe we should put together a single landing page for the community, like the whatever blah 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 airport /now or /community or /something easy, not multiple folders deep. That's a dashboard for the community that might include, for example, on a hot day or in the next 2 weeks, the forecast is blah, 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 the density altitude of the airport will have, this will mean aircraft will appear to be flying lower and may appear louder than normal because of the client, like explaining that stuff, and whether we expect traffic increases over a holiday weekend or whether there's going to be a military flyby. If there's like one place for the community where all of the kind of superficial aviation information could be presented, including that, and that's what I'm thinking, like, because I don't know if a density altitude, just get, one engine out operations on a King Air kind of thing is necessarily interesting to the community, but they might be interested in knowing that if it's about to get really hot, that it might, if I'm perceiving that airplanes are flying lower and they're louder, now I might have some understanding of why that's happening today. Something like that.
Okay. I think
just a kind of an idea, because it's like I you know what I mean, it's like if we're going to do a report, I want to do something with the data. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thanks for your questions.
Rick, do you have any questions or comments?
No.
All right, Mary.
I was the one who asked for the density altitude, and I brought it up in the context of the connected, that it was beneficial information for the pilots and the community. And I guess it's what David's saying as well. It would seem like we should have it for a piston, a 172 as well, just because that's what people experience. And that was my thinking, and you'll see in my notes in the somewhere that, is connected still a useful piece of information. But if we are going to continue it, that is a way to relay to the public at large why they're lower or louder. And also for pilots, it's that constant reminder of, and most pilots are aware of it, except for that if our staff is having to say, "Are you sure?" then not every pilot is aware of it. So, that's where I see the value of it. And I thank you for getting it together. I just think a piston piece of this could be useful too. And it doesn't have to be.
So just a quick question. So I think what I'm hearing from the board, it was from Mary and David so far, is we want to use the information to develop some sort of public community-sided information delivery, not necessarily, we already have it almost on the pilot passenger outreach side, but more so on the community side.
Right. But it also plays into that safety in the red, yellow, green, right? I mean, density altitude is one of those checklist things that, and I think I gave that to you years ago in terms of that's a red. or a yellow. It's being aware of it. And you can adapt to it, but you have to adapt to it.
One thing, oh, go ahead.
It's just, it's not just for the community, it's primarily, but it's also for pilot education.
And can I just, to reiterate, because I'm not like into giving staff tasks. I would prefer you think about this, and then when we have our discussion about boards and culture, if we find that this fits, then act on it. But I don't want to ask you to do something specific. I want to do something that's in the context of bigger decisions that we make and
you'd actually have to tie that with, how do you get it out? If you're giving them real-time information, how do you get that out? Mm-hmm. I mean, do people randomly often look at the airport website? I don't think so. They go to look at the webcam to see how much snow is coming down. But what are you going to do with it? It's the outreach issue, David.
Yeah.
What do you do with it?
Yeah, I agree. Just think about that concept, and we can, if it fits in someplace else, that would be awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. In terms of the flight procedures update, I looked through it. That's what I've been trying to, you and I have been dancing all day with phone tag trying to get more clarity on this. And I know that this is very dense, and any pilot will understand it, but when you're presenting information to us as a board, I'm not a pilot, and other people who tune in to watch these meetings aren't pilots. So an acronym heavy, it needs to be dumbed down as well.
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear. Yep.
So I'm looking forward to that in February. I was curious with Mark Covey. He said for some, the idea that the FBO staff is the same staff that is operating heavy snow removal equipment does not compute. I was just curious what his statement there meant.
I don't know specifically. I could read it again. I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's okay then.
Catch that.
And he did the CM, and that's great. And he mentions that part of that 538 pages of material covering everything. I wondered how much of it covered the communications and community relations. I'm just curious if you
25%.
25%. There's a whole module on that. I'm on the committee that makes that material. I can tell you that's substantial.
And if you look at Lauren's title right after Tapia, she's also a certified member.
Yep.
Yeah, we've got quite a few of them now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're working on that.
Okay. Then, so the climb gradient. And then in terms of this annual operations and comment report, this is quite concerning to me in terms of seeing what's happening, 233. And if I, between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., that's 10, 15, 29. And I've always been concerned about how we're encroaching into nighttime. And I've always been concerned that, I want to hit first track. So we're going to hit we're going to arrive at 2 a.m, or we're going to leave at 4 a.m. And I'm very, this is really concerning to me because we're going to see more and more of this. And this is kind of goals. We need to really be thoughtful about, because it's really gotten bigger, and I don't have it. I guess I would be curious to see, I guess I have old data and I can pull it up, what it was in 14, 15, 16, you can see how this numbers are just escalating. And this is a real disturbance to the community. And do we just say, too bad?
We've got some ideas on creating that third tier for the incentive program, at least on the incentive side.
Yeah, but it's not going to do anything for the 12 a.m. or the 4 a.m.s or the 5 a.m.s because they're choosing not to buy in to the fly quiet. But if I'm woken up at 4 a.m., and I'm paying my property taxes to subsidize stuff, that's a real insult.
So, Mayor, are you in Exhibit 2? Is that what you're looking at?
This is the operations and comment report. Is this in here?
Yeah, Exhibit 2 in that report.
Yeah.
That has the okay. So you're talking about like the 5 a.m. I mean, we had. I mean,
you had
one is
five.
too many, but
you had 5 arrivals in 5 a.m. and you had 7 departures in the 5 to 6 a.m.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, and at 4 a.m. you had 2 departures.
Yeah.
At 12 a.m. you had 4 arrivals and 1 departure, and 11 p.m. you had 8 arrivals and 2 departures. These are big over time, and I guess what is that? It goes to culture of users as well, and how. I mean, he talks about influencing behaviors for safety. I'm saying, how do we influence behaviors for politeness?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've spent 15 years. I've spent 15 years doing exactly what you just described, and I think we've got a really robust program, more so than almost any general aviation airport, at least I know of. But there's always more to do, and that's what I've said before. And I know that that's not an answer to what you're describing, Mary, but I do feel like we're giving it an honest shake every day when we come in.
Well, it's this aspirational change from a Piston to a Cirrus to a Pilatus to a King Air to a jet, and it's very disturbing, and when maybe these hangar tenants, by the cost allocation, are not completely covering their cost, and then you're waking me up at 4 a.m. That's just rude, and we need to somehow convey that. So that's my comment on that. And I sent out another thing that was out of the Wall Street Journal about electric vehicle takeoff and landings to Kevin, and asked him to distribute that article to everybody else. It was very interesting. It came through on my civil engineering.
I'll send that, Mary. I have it. It looked like you needed a subscription to open it, but I
didn't. But I guess what came across in that is, it's like they're trying to develop these alternative electric takeoff vehicles, and they're very aware of the 65 dB, which, but they talk about that there's health effects to people and how people feel noise. Noise and annoyance is a real thing. It has health effects. It has effects on school children, and we need, as a part of our culture, to bring this to. I've said it all before, and we are an airport, but if you can influence behavior for safety, somehow we have to push a stronger message of influencing behavior to not be rude. So thank you. And Hardy, I want to get together and try and understand this flight procedures thing.
Okay. You got it.
Me too.
Yeah, we could do. We've had some pretty good success having a couple board members come. We go into the conference room.
Okay.
Or I could do it on Zoom. Would be easy too. No problem there at all.
Sounds good. Is there any public comment on the Aviation and Community Services Department?
I have no public comment.
And I had one other observation in this, in that Sierra Aero at 3,085 operations, Mountain Lion at 2,070, that's 5,155, and they run piston operations, right? They're all piston.
No, that's
Mountain Lion has a lot of turboprop also.
Oh, okay. Says, I was looking at, in terms of in turboprop, so they're running 40% of our turboprop. If I say Mountain Lion, that's 40% of the turboprop. operations. And then I look at the number of comments on turboprop. How many of them are related to Mountain Lion? And you know,
I don't have that data yet, but we'll get it for you.
Yeah, that's an important piece because, you know, as being a good neighbor, as being on the field, they should, if they're that big of a operator, they should be good neighbors. And Sierra Aero is 20% of our pistons, correct? At 3,000 of the over 15,000 piston.
Yeah, that counts for rental aircraft, training aircraft.
Okay. I'm just, you know, at Mountain Lion, that if they're 40%, we need to be a little more aware of that aircraft.
We do have, they have a signatory agreement with the airport, so they're on a specified flight path agreement with the airport. It doesn't happen in all conditions because they can't, there's variables for weather and air traffic control and things like that. Chris and Barbera and Mountain Lion and Sierra Aero have all kind of, I'll call it donated, but contributed significant flight time to helping the airport test different methods of getting into and out of the airport. They've been the first person to raise their hand and say, hey, if you have a better way for us to come into or out of the airport, we will not only fly it, but we'll promote it among the rental fleet, the charter aircraft pilots. They're the easiest people we have to get a hold of because we work with them all the time. So I can raise my hand and safely say that they are doing the right thing every day here at this airport. And I stand behind that statement. And again, there's always more to do. And if we can modify those flight paths, I think the flight procedures activity is going to help us with that. But I think the operator's doing a pretty good job.
The other thing I'd add to that, and I would agree with Hardy, that we have to remember that if we didn't have that operator who we have a strong relationship with, the folks using those aircraft are going to use other operators. So I strongly believe that you'd see more Wheels Up, King Airs, and other type of aircraft that would be coming in and out of our airport if Mountain Lion wasn't here doing what they're doing. And so, you know, there's cause and effect, and there's different market factors that play in on that. But folks that want to charter a PC-12 are going to charter a PC-12.
Are any of
there's an education on that part? Maybe we could work on that. But that's what we believe.
Were any of the voluntary curfews related to our on-field operators?
We had, and I'm speaking from memory, Mary, but I think we had about 3, and they were like 4 minutes to 7, and one was like 1.5 minutes after 10, but we have not had, or after, after 10. But no, we have not had any significant out of curfew violations.
Okay.
Something that I recently learned from Kevin, which I thought was kind of important for us to recognize, and I don't know if this is something that can be quantified in these reports, is that a number of the comments are on aircraft that are actually within our noise abatement procedure.
Yeah.
Like they're doing what they're supposed to do and they still get a comment. I think if we can track that, I think it's valuable because it does suggest to us whether or not somebody is just disregarding our recommendations or whether our recommendations are actually not good.
And I think I agree with that. I think David Van Quest does track that. Hardy, maybe we could talk to him about that because I know he looks at all those tracks and work it into our report.
We do. We have 2 different responses to those, Director Diamond. So one of them would be it's compliant, but it created an annoyance, and the other one would be it's non-compliant. So we do track that metric. I don't know to what detail he assigns that to individual, or what detail we report on that to individual tracks, but he does that through his analysis process.
Right. I mean, especially if we've got that data, because then when we make, like, to what Mary was saying, it's like, well, we need to, something needs to be done. It's like, well, we kind of need to know what we need to do. Maybe what we need to do is about decency, but maybe what we need to do is about rethinking some of the noise abatement procedures as well. And if that data can kind of inform us on that, that would be handy, I think.
No, agreed. Yep.
Okay, is there any more discussion on this subject? All right. Future agenda priorities and meeting management.
So I think we're in pretty good shape there. Our rolling agenda is quite dynamic. I'm going to need to make changes to it just from what we've already got, what we've talked about today. But yeah, that's just a standing item to look at what's coming forward. I'm going to work with Kat on February and see what all we can accomplish in that meeting, what we may have to move around a little bit to make it tenable. And then I will be getting we'll get some meeting links out for a workshop here in early February. So just look for those things coming up on future agenda items.
Okay, so right now we're thinking possibly closed session beforehand to talk about land leases and closed session after.
Yeah, so for that next meeting, there may not need to be a closed session after because we were going to do my evaluation, but if we can get I'm thinking like the 8th or 9th of February, if we can get a meeting on the 8th, 9th, or 10th of February. I know there's already another ad hoc committee meeting, or the PI 311 meeting on the 10th of February, and I'll get you a link on that. So probably the 8th or 9th, maybe if we can get a meeting there, then we could probably knock out the employee, my GM evaluation, and spend a couple hours on goals, if that's okay with everyone. We might be able to do that.
Okay.
And then at the beginning of the February 23rd meeting, we'll have the second part of our closed session on rates, fees, and charges.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. And conference attendance reports.
So did we talk about who's coming to the next ACT meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Apologize.
The subject.
Let me find that here.
That's actually on February 9th. So that might.
Yeah, we got that on. So we'll try not to do that. And we'll get this. So it could be like the 14th or 15th, but the next board meeting is coming up fast. So, because it's early in February. But, we've got for the next two, I'm trying to find my notes on that. Sorry. The next two ACT meetings, who would like to attend those? We're going to be doing one. We've had a request from a couple of folks that really want us to talk about the types of aircraft that use Truckee, and what types of aircraft should we be seeing? What types would we not see? Could a Boeing 737 business jet land here? So we're going to go through a little presentation on that. Then I'm also going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to try and keep it interesting, but on runway design code and airport reference code, which is really the big key that I know it's hard to keep that interesting, but that is what decides the size of aircraft that use this airport. And it's going to be important for our master plan discussions. It's the B2 thing that you often hear me talk about. We're gonna break that down in a fun and informative. There may be prizes and awards for questions.
Staying awake.
Then I'm looking in March, trying to do something on the master plan, but just because we're going to be right in the thick of that with the third runway conversation going on. So anyways, that's what I got in February and March.
So I've got a question for you, given that exactly the timing of what you just said. Would the February 9th ACT maybe a better topic be why we're thinking about a third runway?
Sure. I was going to kind of maybe do that in March when I'm going to have more information on it, but
okay.
But I'm going to have a lot more data in March. But I have enough that we could really go through and talk about it. But I'm going to have a lot more in March, and then I think in April, early April is probably when we're going to be able to do these workshops, these virtual workshops with the full-blown show on the master plan that is not part of ACT. It's a separate, distinct outreach effort that Aviatrix is going to help us with.
I would love for us to have an ACT topic on that before we have it at the board meeting, just so people.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it's a lot to take in a 3-minute.
I'll talk with Brad and the Meat and Hunt folks, and maybe we do it in February. You know, that's in a couple of weeks. And so if we feel like we've got a lot of info, I know Brad's he's on this meeting, he's down there listening. So I'll get with him, and you know, we could do something on that in February. I know I've got a couple of these my ACT team members that have asked me to do this, and so I think we're going to still have plenty of time to do it in March and be well ahead before it shows up on a board meeting agenda.
So this might be a Josh question. If we do something like, and I think it would be super valuable to have that, given that we absolutely know this is a board agenda item, should we not have anybody from the board there? Because then presumably a comment from that board member is then public, and or is that not an issue?
That's not a Brown Act issue. It'd be up to individual directors, you know, if they wanted to participate in the ACT meeting before it came to the board, but certainly could do so.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Josh. Yeah, Kevin, I don't mean to derail the
Oh, no, you're fine. Just looking to see if there's anyone that wants to attend those two, it's February 9th and March 9th.
I'll do whatever meeting is available.
Okay.
So if anybody else wants it,
David's available for either.
February 9th, I'm at LAFCO down in Auburn.
Oh.
I'd like to attend the one about types of aircraft.
Okay.
That's February 9th, isn't it?
That's February 9th, yeah.
And you give the other slot to Teresa?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. We'll volunteer her. She's not here, so she gets volunteered. All right.
And since Rick covered Master Plan 1, I'll cover Master Plan 2 in March.
So
yeah, you were goofing off in Mexico getting COVID.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kids do wild parties.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that was all I had on that.
Okay.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Well, I want to know Kevin's summary list.
Yeah. So yes, I'll do the summary list, the direction to staff. We had the conference attendance reports. I'm going to spare you on that. I'm going to do a written report on the issues conference, and I'll throw that in next month. I usually do that in February. Hardy was there with me, so we'll give you a full report on that. And there's a lot of good stuff that came out of SWAHI. So we were there, the Southwest chapter of the American Association of Airport Executives, for those who care. We were at a conference there too and got a lot of good info. So the direction to staff list, is that next? Is that right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I have changed the email language under the public comment, so we'll get that all fixed, based on what we talked about. Get you a quote for $50 million in insurance and bring that back. So
nope, it's done.
That off right now.
Good job on that one.
That's really good. So I have on my air show staff report a list of information that you wanted on the air show. So I'll work with the air show committee to provide what they need. I want them to do it, but I'll provide them some information that we have on the things that were brought up. Set up the workshop. We'll get this workshop set up, and then get you the cost on the study. There was a question on what the Convergent Performance or the Falcon 16 report was. I did take a note that I think I'm going to hold off on that discount until we talk a little bit more about strategy. We may feel comfortable after the February workshop to do that, but I've got that down as we might need a policy instruction on strategy for fuel with metrics and goals that we're trying to accomplish. We talked about Hardy and I'll get with that, but David brought up the idea of a dashboard, with some information, and so Hardy and I will probably circle back around with David on how to collect and distribute some of this information that we're talking about. Kind of a landing page. We talked about this density altitude. I started writing down a note on that, on what to do there, but I think where that ended up is we'll see where this fits in. It may be appropriate to do an article on density altitude and connected so people can see how we're going to use that data. And then I've got my March and April ACT attendees. So that's what I had. Anything else anyone else has?
You didn't include the contract on air show.
Okay, I have. Yes, I've got that here, but I didn't say it. Yep.
Is there at this point you are planning for a connected going out? Are you writing articles right now?
Not yet. But
okay.
We can talk about that. We'll wait till after the workshop before we get too far along with that.
Okay, because that was good. Thanks. Okay.
All right. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Now, I want to stay here all night. I move that we stay here all night.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
All right. Oh, do we need, I guess you don't take public comment on that, do you? Vice President Diamond?
Yes.
Director Hetherington?
Yeah.
Mr. Odette is absent. President Rolfe?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all. A lot of good work.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Get better.